Hello and welcome to the Actual Tech Media MegaCast event on ensuring trust and security in enterprise IT and the cloud. This event is brought to you in partnership with Octa, Sophos, Dichotic, Firemon, Alkyra, Gigamon, and Clumio. We've got an incredible lineup of expert presenters on today's event, so I think you're in for a real treat. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule in enterprise IT to join us on this event. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'll serve as your moderator. Before we get started, there's just a few things that you should be aware of. First off, this is a MegaCast, and I'd like to say that we have a mega lineup of prizes. I'll be talking about the prizes as well as the prize drawing requirements in just a moment. We also want this to be an educational event, so we encourage your questions. You can put those in the questions box, and we'll be doing our best to answer every one of those questions that come in. We'll have a dedicated Q&A session with each of our expert presenters, and I'll be queuing up the best questions, so get your questions in early. We also have a special best question prize, which I'll be talking about in just a moment. I'll also be asking you in the audience a number of poll questions. And of course, we always appreciate your participation in those polls. I'll be sharing the results of each poll with you so you can see how you stack up with your peers. We also want this to be a social event. You can tweet directly from your console, and the hashtag for today's MegaCast will be automatically appended. And finally, we have a number of resources available for download in your audience console in the Handouts tab. I encourage you to download those resources or click on those links because they won't be easily accessible after today's presentation. Now, when it comes to prizes, we've got 5 Microsoft Surface Pro 7 hybrid tablets that we'll be giving out on today's event. We also will be announcing the winner of an Amazon $500 gift card every 30 minutes. That's after every presentation on the MegaCast today. Now, the primary requirement is that you must be live in attendance to qualify, but there are a number of other prize terms and conditions, such as all prize winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media. We will reach out to prize winners after the event. You can find the full list of prize terms and conditions in the Handouts tab. And for 2021, we've started a special prize where if you ask the best question, you can win a $50 Amazon gift card. And we'll be doing this for each of the sessions on the event today. So that's one Amazon $50 gift card for each of our sessions. And with 7 presentations on the event, that's an additional 7 Amazon $50 gift cards. Now, over the years that we've been running the MegaCast and EcoCast event series, thanks to generous prize winners, we have helped you to donate thousands of dollars to the charities that you see on the screen, including the Hunger Project, Reading is Fundamental, International Rescue Committee, PetSmart Charities, and Cancer Research. We've also donated to the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund and One Tree Planted in partnership with the Gorilla Guide Book Club. If you win a prize and you'd like to donate your prize value to charity, we would love to help you do that. More information about the Gorilla Guide Book Club can be found there in the Handouts tab. If you go to gorilla.guide, you can download free educational IT books. These are full-length ebooks on a wide variety of enterprise IT topics, so I encourage you to check those out. The hashtag for today's event over on Twitter is ATM MegaCast. If you tweet from the console using the Twitter icon on the right-hand side of your screen, the Twitter hashtag will be automatically appended. Feel free to tag or follow Actual Tech Media and me, David M. Davis, as well. You can subscribe to all the Actual Tech Media social channels there in your audience console, YouTube, Facebook, and the 10 on Tech podcast over in the iTunes Store, as well as our LinkedIn channel where we post all of our latest and greatest content. Now, before we jump into a few poll questions and I introduce you to our first presenter, being a former IT manager myself, when we talk about cloud or any new innovation or change in IT, we must be first ready to answer the question, why? Why are we making this change? Why should we do this? And when it comes to cloud, in my mind, the reason for cloud is that traditional legacy infrastructure is just so inefficient, so complex, so costly, and increasingly, we aren't able to meet the needs of our company with our traditional hardware and software that we're running on premises. The idea with cloud computing is that it helps us to be more efficient and more agile. We can become kind of the Superman of our company and help to really enable the business. Cloud gives us this infinite agility and scalability, as well as a pay as you go pricing model that allows us to move from CapEx to the OpEx model, which I know that your financial folks over in the CFO's office are really going to appreciate. And most importantly, it helps us to focus on the business and its application. So cloud is really cool and it makes us really efficient in IT, but there's also a lot of confusion around cloud. There's multiple forms of cloud: private, public, hybrid, multi-cloud, enterprise cloud. There's everything as a service: SaaS, PaaS, IaaS, DRaaS, backup as a service. And there's a lot of differences between cloud offerings. Azure, AWS, GCP, these aren't all the same. There's a lot of incompatibilities. There's differences in management models. And really, by default, none of them are the same as what we're doing on premises. But that's also kind of the idea. Am I right? Cloud is going to help us to be more efficient and agile. But in order to use it and use it intelligently and make the right decisions for our cloud architecture and our cloud solutions, we need to clear up confusion and get all of our questions answered, understand the differences between cloud solutions, make sure that we choose new, innovative, and powerful solutions so that we can effectively help save our company time and money and really make us in IT the superheroes of the organization. So with that in mind, we're here on this Cloud MegaCast to help you gain an education into the latest cloud innovations and get all your questions answered. So before I introduce you to our first presenter, I've got just a few questions around cloud that I want to ask you, and I'll share the results with you. All right, first question for you out there in the audience is on the screen, and this is: do you feel like your data in the cloud is just as safe as your data on premises? Maybe you feel that it's safer. I don't know. But it's a simple yes or no question. Do you feel that your data in the cloud is just as safe as your data on premises? I'm curious to hear what you all think about this, and I'm going to share the results of this with you. If you haven't answered one of these poll questions before, just do it right there in the slides window. Should be pretty quick and painless to answer, yes or no question. All right, I see lots of responses coming in. Thank you for those. Let me share the results of this one with you. And it looks like 46% said yes. You feel that your data is just as safe in the cloud as it is on premises. 53% said no. So it's obvious that cloud security is still, a great concern to everyone out there. Roughly almost a 50-50 split here. Second question: do you practice defense in depth? And if you're not sure what defense in depth is, just say not sure. If you aren't too familiar with the term defense in depth, basically it's the layered strategy of security, kind of thinking of security in layers. Think of security like the onion with multiple layers. You don't want your security like a egg with a soft, gooey center. You want multiple hard layers of security like a jawbreaker. That's basically the defense in depth idea. All right, so thank you everyone for responding to that poll question. Let me share the results of this one with you. And it looks like 29% said yes, definitely practicing defense in depth. 12% said no. 57% really not quite sure maybe what defense in depth is, or if you're doing it at all. And then second to last poll question here: do you use microsegmentation as part of your security strategy? All right, thank you to everyone who responded to that one. And I just shared out the results, really pretty much split between all three answers there. 36% said yes, you do use microsegmentation, 26% no, and 36% not really quite sure about microsegmentation. And then final question here before I introduce you to our first presenter, and that is simply: what's your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company? Many of the IT professionals on our MegaCast and EcoCast events are here effectively as a buyer's guide event, to learn about multiple solutions all in one place quickly and efficiently, see those solutions in action, get all your questions answered. And so the question is, if you're looking to update solutions at your company, specifically today we're talking about cloud-based solutions or cloud-related solutions in some way, what's your time frame for doing so? All right. Thank you, everyone who responded to that poll. We do appreciate that. I always love to hear your feedback. Also, love to hear your feedback there in the questions box. I'll get back to everyone who posted a question here in just a moment. And with that, I'm excited to introduce you to our first presenter on today's Cloud MegaCast, welcoming Misbah Rahman, Technical Marketing at Alkyra. Misbah, thanks for being on.
Hi, David. Super excited to be part of this MegaCast, so looking forward to it.
Excellent. Great to have you. Take it away.
Cool. So let me take the control. So, thanks for attending this session. So in the next 20 to 25 minutes, I'll take you guys to the journey to Alkyra Network Cloud. And while taking you there, we'll talk about how the enterprise IT requirements are changing and evolving for the cloud era, and why do you need a solution like Alkyra Network Cloud. So as David shared, my name is Misbah Rahman. I lead the technical marketing initiative at Alkyra and have been in the networking industry for the last 12 to 13 years. Now, quickly, just giving you a brief background around Alkyra and when we started and why we started. So Alkyra was founded in May 2018 with a vision to reinvent the networking for the cloud era. With that, what we mean is, if you look at the application developers, the cloud architects, the cloud developers, when they need to develop any application, what do? They go to a cloud provider, they go and provision the VM, develop their stuff, and basically consume the compute and storage on demand and whenever they wanted it. While when you look at on the network side of the things, it's pretty static. It's pretty mundane. It's done with the same way. You need high upfront TCO costs. It's not offered on demand. It's not offered as a service. And it's not built or architected for this cloud era. So there was definitely a need to simplify this networking and to basically architect in a way that aligns with the cloud architecture. So when we pitched this idea to the VC community, we got very encouraging responses. And as a result, we got funded by all the top tier one VCs. That includes KDT, Sequoia, Google Ventures, Kleiner Perkins, and we got up to $76 million across 2 rounds of funding. Now, after that, we started developing our product. And from the very get-go, we worked very closely with the customers because the idea was that we wanted to develop a product that resonates with the customer use case. It does not have to be like just technology, from a technology perspective, really awesome, but does not have a real use case. So at the launch, what we had is we had a couple of big customers who had already completed their POCs and were ready to deploy. So with our MVP, the product that was ready for the launch, we already had customers who were actually looking to deploy in production. And then at the launch in April 2020, since the launch, we are seeing a lot of traction from customers, and we are super busy with the customer engagement, and we are very excited about that. Now, just spending a couple of minutes on the network challenges, because unless and until we understand the challenges, we cannot appreciate the need for a solution like this. So if you look at it from a traditional networking perspective, we all know that it gets super costly. It has this high upfront CapEx expenditure that you need to have. Like any new use case that you want to integrate into your network, you start with buying routers and switches, routers at different layers, switches at different layers of the network. And it comes at a cost. Once you procure those equipments, now you have to configure it. It takes, again, add cost in terms of the resources. Now you have the firewall appliances, the application appliances. So the point is, whenever you want to embark on a new use case or a new network that you need to build for a business need, it comes with a cost. Now, it's also super slow as well, because whenever we go through this cycle, again, the procurement takes time. If you want to extend connectivity into the cloud, for instance, you have to buy some private connectivities. Now you have to configure those. Now you have to test those, certify those. So it's super slow, and it does not move with the pace at which your business wants to move. And now we have different pieces, like since the cloud is getting into the mix, where the applications are moving from your data center into the cloud. The enterprises are embracing SaaS applications. Now with all those interconnectivity that you need to provide with security, with the same level of standards that you have for on-prem, the network becomes super complex. And the good thing is, like, we have great network engineers who are able to figure out solutions. But when you have to operationalize it at scale, it becomes like almost impossible to do it. So the another challenge that we see in these type of network is unscalable. Like it does not horizontally scale with the needs. Now you are connecting all the different elements into the mix. There's security concern that arises, because like your data centers could be super secure, as we know, we could have, as David was talking about, defense in depth, like at different layers you could have security and all that in data center. But you may not be able to have the same level of security at all points where you are integrating these networks. So it exposes security vulnerability where the network could become unsecure. And then lastly, like when you go into the cloud, all the networking construct that the cloud offers, it comes with its own limitation. So with all these challenges that we see here, we believe is that network becomes a roadblock in the cloud adoption. Now, if you look at it with all these challenges, if you look at it from a network engineer or a network architect lens, the solution that are available at hand for him to get to the cloud are the ones that I have listed on the slide. We can argue that in addition to these solutions, the SASE and SD-WAN can also play into this cloud networking solution, but I kept it out purposefully because they provide you the security and hook into the cloud, but they don't necessarily simplify networking inside the cloud. So all these solutions that I'm talking here is not just provide you a hook inside the cloud, but it also enables networking inside the cloud, like how the VPCs or the VNets are connecting. So that's why I kept the other two out of these options for cloud networking. So the first option that you are looking here is the co-location. What does that mean is you will go to a colo provider, like an Equinix or any other colo provider. You will probably get a cage. You will deploy your routers. You'll deploy your security. Then you extend your direct connect or express router, or any type of private connectivity inside the cloud, and then have your on-prem branches talking to the cloud over this private connectivity. This is again, if you are in multiple regions, you have to basically repeat the same process across many regions. This is great, and some of the big enterprises can afford to do it, and they are doing it as well. But it comes with a cost. It's super costly. From a timing perspective, like we were talking about, this procuring this physical colo cage, the router ordering, the firewall order, the configuration, the certification, extending private connectivity, it takes time too. So again, your pace with which the business is moving, you are like already behind the business requirement. And then if you look at the small or the medium-sized players, they cannot even afford to get this kind of an architecture in place. The second option, where all the small, medium-sized enterprises can implement, is do-it-yourself cloud networking. What that means is that you basically leverage the cloud native construct and establish cloud connectivity from your on-prem into the cloud. This again has its own challenges, because if you look at cloud networking, it's not simple. Those cloud networking constructs are very specific to each cloud provider. So what you need in-house, you just not need the networking expertise, you also need the cloud networking expertise. And if you are embracing multiple clouds, then you have to embrace or you have to have people with expertise in all those clouds that you are in. Now, in addition to these cloud native construct for security and all that, you still need some kind of integration. And plus, at the same time, it comes with its own limitation, like the cloud limits comes into the picture. So in a nutshell, you would be able to extend connectivity, but you won't be able to extend the connectivity with the same standards as you have laid it out for on-prem networks. The third tool that I'm going to talk about are the orchestration tools. They basically claim that they can simplify cloud networking, which in a way I do agree that they do simplify some part of the cloud networking complexity. What they do is they automate the workflows of the native cloud constructs and make it simpler. A particular flow, they make it simpler. But at the same time, they do not provide you the architecture that you need in order to have a full-blown scalable cloud connectivity from your on-prem network. All they are just doing is simplifying the workflows. And since they are running on top of the cloud native construct, they also come with the same limitation that you have for the do-it-yourself cloud networking constructs. Now, with all these challenges and the solutions that we have in hand, I just want to put it out like what is needed in this type of an architecture where we still have the data center, but we are moving those applications from data centers into the cloud. Enterprises are also embracing SaaS applications. So what is needed is a one unified solution, which is built from the ground up, are taking care of all these requirements from the get-go. That can actually give you high throughput into the public cloud. No matter if there are cloud limitations in terms of the throughput, the solution should be architected in a way that it basically takes care of all those limitations. It provides you a same standardized approach to secure multi-cloud networking. If I'm embracing multiple clouds like Azure or AWS, I do not have to install or deploy separate security infrastructure in each of the cloud. It should just go through the same standardized way. Even if the traffic is coming from on-prem, it should still go through the same standardized multi-cloud security stack. And all is done with efficiency in terms of the connection from a user and the application perspective should be closest to the user and application. From security, we move to cloud segmentation. Again, it's very closely related to security. Like from an on-prem network, we all know that we use segmentation to isolate our traffic, to secure our traffic. But when it comes to the cloud, we are not able to extend the same level of segmentation. We have to develop and maintain two different types of network. So that unified solution that we are talking about should be seamlessly extend the segmentation from your on-prem networks into the cloud. The next is the improved SaaS internet experience. The SaaS application, the way that they have architected it, they have architected it in a more distributed manner where they have point of presence closest to the user. More than the optimized access into the SaaS application, what they ask you is that the user should terminate into those SaaS applications as soon as possible. So the architecture that provides cloud connectivity should have that, it should basically closely align with that SaaS architecture where it sits closest to the user and the application and provides you the fastest access into the SaaS application. The high availability and redundancy should come out of the box. You don't have to come up with complex design in order to have those availability and redundancy. It should come out of the box. You should have full operational visibility and control. Like with cloud adoption, what we are seeing is people tend to have different monitoring and visibility tools because what works on-prem necessarily won't work in the cloud. So you have two sources of truth in order to manage your network. So there could easily be blind spots. So you need a system that can provide one unified way of looking into your network. And the provisioning needs to be very, very simple. We all know networking can become very complex, and part of the problem or challenges with operationalizing and time to market is that difficulty in provisioning. So all that complexity should be abstracted from the user, and users should have a point-and-click interface. And then all the cloud workflows should be integrated into this unified solution. With that, I would like to introduce you guys to Alkyra Network Cloud. What we offer is a global unified network that is offered as a service. customers or our users can simply log on into our portal, get their username, register to the service, and they can just start building their network. It has three different components, three main components. The solution has three main components. Number one is end-to-end network connectivity. What does that mean is any enterprise, whether it's a small enterprise, a medium-sized enterprise, or a big enterprise, and they have presence in different regions, they can come to a portal. They can spin up their virtual exchange points or virtual point of presence through our Alkyra interface in no time. And technically what they get out of it, they can establish their backbone between the region with a couple of clicks without needing any physical infrastructure. All the problems, the challenges that we were talking about procuring the router, procuring the physical space, spending time and cost, not needed anymore. You just have to come to an on-demand portal. You basically request for those services, and you would be able to establish end-to-end connectivity between all your regions in no time. You could integrate network and security services. What we offer is a marketplace for all the network services, and there are different vendors in the marketplace, plus Alkyra provided native services. And you can easily order them again through a point-and-click operation. You can order those. Those get spin up in the Alkyra cloud. We maintain the life cycle of all those appliances that comes up. And if you want to integrate those services into the data path, it's done through an intuitive policy framework that we have. You just have to define your intent that my traffic coming from this source to this destination needs to route through this service, and boom, you get it. The third piece is the visibility, control, and governance. It provides you a one unified way of looking at your networks, whether it's an on-prem network, whether it's your cloud network, whether it's SaaS application, or the public-facing application that you are hosting. So it's now you do not have any multiple visibility tools. It's just one place that you are looking at your whole network holistically. The next one is we're going to double click into the service, like what is it all about and how it's offered. So what you see on the, like in the middle of the slide, these are the CXPs. These CXPs can be spun up in any cloud region through the portal, and it can be done, it can be spun up on demand. As soon as you spun up those CXPs in different regions, they automatically connect to each other in a full mesh fashion. Like what it means is, from a routing perspective, you do not have to bring up the data plane. You do not have to go through all the complication of setting up BGP and all that for route exchange. It automatically happens, and they automatically connect to each other. As you connect the remote sites, the on-prem sites, the cloud workloads, the SaaS application, and all the routes it learns about, it automatically advertises to the other CXPs. So the routing information is automatically distributed. In terms of the connectivity for on-prem sites, you can bring in a remote site over IPsec. You can extend your SD-WAN fabric into the CXP. You can bring in your remote users. You can extend your private MPLS connectivity into the CXP. And then on the cloud sides, you can terminate any of the major public cloud providers along with the SaaS application, and they could be integrated seamlessly with any network services in the data path. All these CXP infrastructure, it actually runs on a hyperscale infrastructure. With that, what I mean is the connectivity between the CXP is over a high bandwidth, low latency backbone. So you get that automatically out of the box, this connectivity, which is, again, high bandwidth, high speed, without you needing any infrastructure. And then everything, this service is managed through an Alkyra CSX portal, which is the management GUI, single source of truth for managing, configuring, and monitoring your environment. And then we expose it to the API, all the APIs are exposed from the CSX portal. So anything that you are able to achieve from the portal can be done programmatically from the APIs as well. Now, with that service, what all are the use cases that we can solve? As we were talking about, we can establish corporate network backbone easily. Like you can just think about it today, and tomorrow you have a backbone. this is that simple. Basically, you just go show your intent that here are the regions that I need my presence, and you establish the backbone, and all done like over a high-speed link. You can have multi-cloud network and security architecture, like a standard multi-cloud network and security architecture. You don't have to set up different architectures for on-prem, different security architecture for Azure, different architecture for another cloud, and all that. All is integrated in a unified, standardized way on the same Alkyra point, like CXP. And whether the traffic is coming from on-prem to cloud, cloud to cloud, or cloud to on-prem, all go through the same standard architecture. You will get the optimal SaaS application experience because all these CXPs are actually strategically placed to the closest to the user or closest to the application. So anything, if you want to exit out over internet and access a SaaS application, all the SaaS applications are very close to the CXP point of like the location. So you get an optimized access into the SaaS application, and it completely aligns with the SaaS architecture itself, which is a distributed architecture. It demands the user to basically access those SaaS application as soon as possible without backhauling the traffic to the data center or a centralized location and then provide the access. So it completely aligns with the SaaS architecture and thus providing you an optimal SaaS experience. Then you can also do cloud and enterprise DMZ. This is a pretty cool use case as well. So if you have a public-facing service or an internet-facing service or a website that you want to host on our platform, that can be hosted easily with few clicks. So these applications could be in data centers. These applications could be in any of the clouds, and all you need to do is define that these are part of the public-facing application, and Alkyra will take care of providing the public IP, the FQDN, and updating the DNS entries so that we could receive the traffic with security, and you can host the DMZ type application very easily. We can also provide the zero trust network access, which is like with pandemic, there is an exponential rise of people working from home and all that. So all that remote users can be securely terminated into the Alkyra infrastructure, and we can provide cloud, on-prem, and all the access through that zero trust network access as well. Now the big question is how you configure all those. So again, that's another one thing that I really like about the solution, that it's super easy. I've been a network engineer and have provisioned all these networks, and it becomes super complex. But here, what you need to do, it's a three-step process. You just come, register for the service. Once you register, you will get this GUI, and then you basically select what you want to do. Like if you want to add the remote site, you basically just point and click that I want to add this remote site. You provide the required details about the remote site, like the IP address, what protocols you want to use, and all that. And then if you want to integrate it with network services, you just do point and click, pick up a service you want from the marketplace, and boom, you basically deploy it. Similarly with the cloud. Once you are done with this point and click operation, like on the GUI, you just click provision, enjoy your tea while the network gets provisioned. You don't need any software to download. You don't need any hardware to buy. You don't need to have deep understanding of any of the cloud to do this. And to be honest, this is too good to be true. So I think the best way that I would say that you'll believe it. The seeing is believing, basically. So the best way to do it is to get a demo. Like one of the analysts that we were talking about it, they said that it's as easy as starting my Zoom call. So that was a big compliment that we got from one of the analysts. So I would highly encourage it to set up a demo so that you could see how simple it is. And then you will get to know like how we are abstracting all the complexity from the network and making it super, super simple. Then the visibility, like day two, after you have configured the network, how we are simplifying the day two visibility. So now what we are making sure is that we are able to monitor both your on-prem and the cloud environments, basically so that from an enterprise perspective, you do not have any blind spots. Like you could basically view your infrastructure health, the application utilization. You can also do troubleshooting with your troubleshooting tool. So the complete visibility about your network, from monitoring to the audit logs to the troubleshooting aspects, is all integrated into this one single interface, so that you don't have to toggle between multiple tools to actually get the complete health of your network. Lastly is the service billing and chargeback aspects. So what we have seen with the cloud environment, right? So every business unit within the enterprise like have its own budget from the cloud perspective. They have their own accounts and they get billed separately. We wanted to bring the same concept to networking as well, where from the get-go, as you are spinning up different resources in this Alkyra portal, there is an option to attach a billing tag. The billing tag is nothing but a business unit that basically requesting the IT to provision those workloads. And at the end of the day, you could have these itemized billing where you could bill to individual business unit based on the consumption that they are doing, like on the resources on the cloud Alkyra portal. So we could basically add the billing tags and do a chargeback based on the individual business unit. Now, the key takeaways is what we are able to achieve with this service is you can have a global unified network infrastructure, which is actually delivered as a service. It's on demand. It's worked like a cloud. It's architected like a cloud. And it's like super, super simple. And now with this, the network engineers can respond to the business needs with the pace at which the business wants them to move. Now you don't have to, the application developers don't have to wait for the network to come up before they could do anything. You could just move at the same pace with the business. And this is something that we are already starting to see with some of our customers. One of our customers who wanted to embrace another cloud, it was taking like 6 months for them to get to where, like what the application guys needed it. With Alkyra, they were able to do it like in a few days, and they were able to meet the requirement that the business had from them. Basically, here from a cost perspective, you don't have to buy any hardware, any software, and don't have to have deep expertise in the cloud. You just think about embracing cloud today, you register for the service, and you have it. All that complexity is solved for you with Alkyra solution. So with that, I think I'm done with the content. David, do we have any questions or?
Absolutely. Yeah, great presentation, Misbah. We do have some questions from the audience. While we do that, I'm just going to bring up this poll. I want to call everyone's attention to that simply asks, what additional information would you like about the Alkyra Network Cloud Service? And we'll leave that up there while we do a few questions. We've been getting a ton of questions coming in, and the Alkyra team has been rapidly responding to those as quickly as possible. Let's see. First question that came in, I wanted to pose to you, Misbah, is around security. That was one of the questions we had in our poll at the start, and it was roughly a 50-50 split between folks' confidence, in cloud security. What does Alkyra do around security?
Sure. Great question. So what we are doing is, since we are providing one unified standard way of implementing security, with that what I mean is, let's suppose if you have a particular vendor firewall that you have deployed in on-prem, right, and you're doing segmentation and all that. When you embrace cloud, you are not able to extend the same level of security inside the cloud because of the cloud limitation that you have. You'll probably go something close to it, but not exactly the same way, because segmentation is not possible in cloud. You have to have separate infrastructure. So what it leads you to some blind spots in the network where you think that you have secured it, but technically you have some openings or vulnerability in the network that can be exploited. With Alkyra, what we are doing is we are providing this unified standard architecture where everything from a traffic perspective, like on-prem, going into the cloud, it goes through one central Alkyra cloud exchange point where the firewalls are deployed, where the segmentation could be easily extended from on-prem into the cloud, and you can basically extend the same level of policies that you have on-prem into the cloud, and thus basically leaving you with no blind spot, because the exposure, or from a connectivity perspective, that everything is now connecting to this Alkyra, which provides you the optimal cloud experience and connectivity, and then there and then you are also providing security. So there are no other one-off connections where you might be extending your connectivity and maybe exposing your security vulnerabilities into your network.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, it sounds like a very comprehensive approach as we're talking about defense in depth. So cool to hear that. I hope everyone has responded to this poll, because I'm now going to bring up the next poll. And the poll on the screen is about the Alkyra Network Cloud. And if you'd like to see your own or schedule your own personal demo of this solution, the question is a simple yes or not at this time. And so we'll leave that up here while we do just a couple more quick questions. I should say you made a great point, Misbah, about seeing this in action. Seeing is believing, because I must admit, when I first learned about Alkyra, I was kind of scratching my head like, I'm not quite sure I understand this. And then when I saw a personal demo for myself, I was like, oh, this is really cool. I've never seen anything quite like this again. And like the light bulb went off about just how powerful this is.
Yep,
so,
exactly.
Yeah, so we'll leave that up. Let's see, next question I want to ask you is, what are some of the examples of services that are in the Alkyra marketplace that you mentioned?
Sure. So we got the security services. We got the extranet services where you want to do the route leaking. We got the NAT services like inside the portal, and we are working to add more services like load balancer and all that. That you can get out of it. The remote access VPN, not really a service, but like remote access VPN can also be deployed on the Alkyra CXP. So basically security, NAT, extranet, and then load balancer is something that we are looking into it.
Excellent. And then today, what clouds or cloud services, is this compatible with? Is there a list somewhere that folks should reference?
Sure. So right now, we support the three major clouds, which includes AWS, Azure, and GCP, and looking into other clouds as well in the roadmap to add to our portfolio.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm afraid we're running out of time here in our live Q&A session, but I know you and the folks from Alkyra are rapidly answering the questions that have come in as quickly as possible. We got a ton of great questions, so thank you everyone out there in the audience. And of course, thank you, Misbah, for your excellent presentation today.
Thanks, David. Thanks.
For more information on Alkyra, check out the handouts tab right there. The very first link at the top will take you to the Alkyra website. And there's a lot of resources on there, videos, solution briefs. You can sign up for a demo, of course, and learn more about the Alkyra Network Cloud for yourself. And with that, it's time for our first prize announcement. We have an Amazon $500 gift card that's going to Jay Gitomer from Maryland. Congratulations, Jay Gitomer from Maryland. And our first grand prize, Microsoft Surface Tablet, is going to Bernard Almanzan. Sorry if I mispronounced it, from Hawaii. Congratulations, Bernard Almanzan from Hawaii. Thank you to, of course, everyone for sticking with us on this event. Tons more excellent expert presentations coming up. And speaking of which, I'm excited now to introduce you to our next presenter. Welcome, Mr. Joseph Carson, Chief Security Scientist at Dichotic. Joseph, are you there?
I'm here, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited to join you.
It's great to have you, Joseph. Take it away.
Absolutely. So my name is Joseph Carson. I'm the Chief Security Scientist from Dichotic, and I'm joining you from Tallinn, Estonia, so all the way from across the world. And I'm really excited to share with you my session today, which is really focusing around in the cloud we trust, ensuring trust and security for enterprise IT and the cloud. And I work for a company called Dichotic, who focuses around privileged access management and access security, which is a really important area to help organizations reduce the risks from compromise and stolen credentials. So one of the major challenges many organizations face today, and it's the number one source of cyber fatigue, is for users to remember and change passwords. And what commonly happens is that when we require users to have different passwords, what happens is they tend to actually reuse them in simple variations across many accounts, with the average user having approximately 30 plus accounts that they need to have different usernames and passwords for, sometimes simple variations of those. And this is one of the leading causes of many data breaches that we see continuously. And with many accounts out there, one of the biggest ones that is the target of cyber criminals is privileged access. And what I like to do is everyone step back a bit and let's take a look at what is privileged access, because many organizations tend to look at it as their administrator users or the system administrators, but it goes way beyond that. Privileged access is no longer just about even human accounts. It's about also non-human accounts, whether it being application accounts, APIs, automation, scheduled tasks, integrations, databases. All of those accounts are enabling organization systems to run in the background, and they allow those network and databases and accounts to actually communicate and perform their tasks and jobs. And also accounts are also being interacted by humans, whether it being domain accounts, local administrator accounts, and even normal user accounts that aren't necessarily privileged in regards to the authorization that they have, but actually privileged in regards to the data that they have access to. When you think about doctors who have access to patient records, not necessarily critical in regards to its authorization, but critical in regards to the data that it has access to. And this means that almost all users are now becoming privileged, but not all users' privileges are equal. And it's really important that we actually make sure that we focus on reducing the risks of those. Now, we'll look at some of the most common data breach causes that we see in the industry. It really comes down to poor access management, misconfigurations of systems, overprivileged users, people sharing credentials between themselves and actually sharing them with Post-it notes and putting them through Slack and emails and so forth. And still today, we continue to have passwords as mainly the only security control protecting both standard and privileged access. And in the past year, we've seen also the increase in third-party access and remote employees, and also shadow IT as well. So what things can we do as an industry? What can we do to reduce the risks? Our goal is to help identify, assess, and reduce the risk for the business. And many organizations have looked, of course, to password managers. And I myself have been a user of password managers for the past 20 plus years. And password managers are great, and they bring some fantastic functionality. And this is an area where even Dichotic started our early years in the industry, was around managing privileges and managing passwords. And of course, they bring things like encrypted vaults, integration into browsers to help you do that automation, auto-filling in credentials. They bring along multi-factor and two-factor authentication, add additional security controls. And they also help users create more complex and unique passwords for different accounts, and they have some limited sharing. But as organizations, we need to move beyond password managers. We need to look at much more automation, much more integration. Password managers were great in the past, but we now need to move beyond and actually embrace more modern technology to help us actually make sure we're actually reducing the risk from attacks. And one of the major challenges with password managers is we're still delegating accountability and responsibility for the user to make those decisions. We need to make security usable. We need to help users focus on what their job is and take away that cyber fatigue. Help move passwords into the background. Help allow the user to make sure they're focusing on what they need to be doing. And this is where I want to introduce you to privileged access management. This is really where it focuses around the new ability of enabling authorization and interoperability between systems and humans to really create a much more stronger access management within organizations. And of course, privileged access brings a lot of important functionality, such as things like high availability, compliance and regulatory security controls, whether it being needed for GDPR, PCI compliance, ISO, NIST framework. It also brings in automated discovery so you can quickly find where privileged accounts are across the environment, enabling role-based access, integration, automated backups, and advanced and in-depth reports, and also approval workflows. Some of the really important areas that really help you make sure you get actually going beyond just managing the password, but managing the actually privileged account itself. Now, privileged account management has evolved further into privilege access management. And this is really where we start looking at integrations into identity providers, enabling and actually furthering security controls such as multi-factor authentication, allowing securing DevOps, making sure developers are actually not putting static accounts and not putting the same account password across multiple hard-coded in configuration files, but allowing unique, elastic, on-demand, just-in-time credentials in order to perform the job, enabling session launching and recording so users don't need to know the account password. They actually get enabled and authorized as long as they meet the security controls requirement. And this is really the foundation of enabling the principle of least privilege, and also what we sometimes refer to as enforcing zero trust, which I prefer to look at as adaptive risks. And this is really important. It's no longer about just managing the privilege account. It's about enabling organizations secure usage of privilege access, especially organizations have really adapted to working remotely. And we've found that Dichotic's customers have really embraced privilege access, making sure that in the past year, as employees are working remotely and from home, that they're able to still perform those privileged roles and privileged tasks with the security and the controls in place that actually Dichotic helps provide them. So we think of even further, it's all about automation. And one thing I found, I've worked in a lot of incident response in the past year as well, when they're looking at things like ransomware, unauthorized access, and helping organizations identify how they can actually reduce those risks. And almost with all ransomware cases, a local administrator account was the culprit. A domain access was the culprit that allowed attackers in order to spread the ransomware throughout the environment, causing havoc and chaos and bringing the business to its needs. And for many of those companies and customers, really kind of looking to make sure that their operations actually can be a standstill. And privileged access helps them remediate back to operations quickly and efficiently by actually rotating those accounts, making sure the passwords are actually unique and complex, and making sure that they're able to lock down those credentials quickly in order to allow them to get back to operations as quickly as possible. Automation is our way forward, and privileged access and Dichotic has really helped organizations be able to do that efficiently, effectively. And we think about it, PAM is more than just being a password vault. It is about enabling that privileged access and secure usage of it. And we've all heard the term zero trust, and we'll hear about it multiple times as we move forward. And it really is, it's going down into making sure that it's not about just giving people access and unfederated access. It's about making sure that it's basically zero trust by default, and all access must be continuously verified. But I myself am not a big fan of zero trust terminology. I think it's negative to the business. And I think that we must look at this beyond zero trust, and it's about building digital trust. It's about looking at it from a risk framework, looking from a risk perspective, and how do we make sure that our employees, third parties, cloud on-premise are able to make sure that we're able to function and meet the business needs. And this means that we must look at it from actually a risk framework, and it's all about making sure the right security controls are being satisfied to make sure that people are able to access applications, the data, to do their job. And this really means is where I actually defined and created what I refer to as the Privilege Access Management Matrix. This helps you ask the right questions. It helps you find the right path to success with privilege access management. This really allows you to look at what the priorities, what is the risks, who uses them, how are they secured, where are they located, and the different types, and what is the use cases that privilege access is across your organization. And I've actually kind of developed this further into what we refer to as the privilege lifecycle, so that you actually really make sure you put the right controls and automation in place from the provisioning to the access, to the continuous actually compliance and regulation needs, to the time that you no longer need those accounts. So let Dichotic help you take this journey. And the way I look at the privilege account management, it's almost like a continuous digital polygraph test for access. Make sure that as users are coming in from different devices and different locations with different security controls, this is looking and auditing and making sure and checking that the right security controls are satisfied before that access is granted. And whenever anyone uses looking to elevate their access, that we make sure that the right security controls are also being required for that as well. So this is really important for organizations to make sure that only authorized access is permitted and ability to get visibility into potential attacks coming from cyber criminals. And when we think about cybersecurity, for me, I realized a few years ago when working with a lot of CISOs and I did a lot of penetration tests in power stations. And one thing that I found was that my job, while my skill set is cybersecurity, that is my experience. I've been in the industry for more than 25 years, coming close to 30. And I finally can understand that our job is about using our cybersecurity knowledge and experience, but my job is to reduce the risk to the business, is to listen to users, to help reduce cyber fatigue and make security usable. And this means we must focus on the business risk, and we must focus on enabling users in order to make the right choices and enable them to be successful in their jobs. And that's what security is all about. And to help you get on your path to success, I've actually developed and put together Privileged Access Cloud Security. And this is really focused around how to evolve and make sure that whether you're doing on-premise, in the cloud, hybrid, SaaS applications, development repositories, all of those things that have privileged accounts and third-party vendors as well. This book is to guide you and make sure that you have the right knowledge, the right information in order to be very successful in your PAM implementation, whether it being on-premise or in the cloud. And Dichotic can help you take that journey and make it reality. So one of the things I always say for the audience, I believe, is that understanding hacker techniques is and the processes is the best way to defend against cyber attacks. But it's actually focusing on the business risks that helps you get the security budget in order to take those actions to put the right tools and the right solutions and get the right training and the right people to protect and reduce the risk to your business. So David, I'm happy to open it up for questions from the audience if we have any. And one thing for the book as well, I'd like to point people to where the handouts are. I have made a copy of the digital book for free available to everyone on this call and on the session. So hopefully it will be very valuable and educational for you.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much, Joseph. Great presentation. We do have some questions for you from the audience. And I want to, again, call everyone's attention. Don't forget to download the book that Joseph's talking about that he wrote, he authored. It's right there in the handouts tab, second link from the top. So let's jump now into our Q&A. And while we do that, I'm just going to bring up this poll question for everyone out there in the audience. What additional information would you like about the Dichotic solution? And Joseph, we got a lot of great questions for you. First one, I'll just start with this one, and that is, what's your opinion of going passwordless?
So we have to step back and remember that it's not actually about going passwordless. That's actually misinformation. It's about what we're doing is we're actually going into actually less interactive passwords between humans. Passwords are actually moving into the background. So what we're doing is we're actually less interacting with passwords. It's not that they're disappearing. It's just that the authentication and the password usage is changing, where it's moving away from human interactive to actually being application or API or using keys or passphrases. So passwords are moving into the background. I'm a strong believer in making security simple for users and moving to the background and moving to less password interaction is the way forward. Let companies like Dichotic take control and manage the passwords for you in the background, whether it be non-human or human-based passwords, and that actually is enable users to focus on what their job is and to help to be successful with that.
Excellent. Yeah, good advice. And second question here, they're asking about biometrics. What's your take on biometrics?
I mean, biometrics are great. Again, going to that point around, let's say passwordless is what we refer to, or I refer to as less passwords. We have to remember where biometrics fit. Biometrics do not replace passwords. What they actually do replace is usernames. Biometrics are identifiers. However, they are much more secure measures than a username, such as your email address or random digits or your first name, last name, or first letter, last name. So biometrics actually replace the username portion. So, but they're actually much more difficult to replicate or to clone. And it really means that biometrics should not be used as the only control or the only identifier. You must put things like verifications in place. You must put more security controls in place, such as multi-factor authentication or privileged access management in the background to help make sure that the authorization and the principle of least privilege is adhered to. So, great question. I'm a strong believer biometrics do help, but we have to remember they replace the username, not the password.
Excellent. And next question, can Dichotic help to rotate local admin account passwords?
That's a great question, and that's one of the things that probably many companies that are on the back of a lot of incidents and some of the major incidents in December is that attackers go after local administrator accounts, and even they try to even add normal users into the local administrator group. And Dichotic is there to help you to make sure that all of the local administrator account passwords are unique and rotated, and that only disclose when needed. And also to make sure that the local groups and permissions administrator groups are also make sure that they're actually adhering to your security controls and policies. So Dichotic can help you manage and rotate those local administrator accounts and reduce the threat landscape that attackers love to use and abuse.
Got it. Okay. And then what about managing service accounts? Can Dichotic help with that?
That's a great question, and it's one of the probably most common questions I get quite often is that a lot of organizations, when you deploy applications or you deploy new, let's say, business services, a lot of those have service accounts associated to it, whether it being default credentials that come with those applications or service accounts that get created to help manage the communications and the automation in the background. And the problem with those is that they're sometimes installed by third parties, consultants, or by employees that maybe installed the application and then left and forgot about it. And one of the problems in many organizations are afraid to rotate or change or disable them in case they break something. And this becomes a major threat for organizations. I've seen even when I did a pen test in a power station, it was a service account which I was able to abuse because it was the default credential that was installed as part of the actual implementation that was installed in many stations across the globe. So it's important to make sure that we get managing and reduce the risk of service accounts. They are in many cases non-human accounts. They're enabling applications to communicate and perform their job. And Dichotic is here to help you not only manage and discover the dependencies and rotate those credentials when you need to, but also to make sure you have the right provisioning capabilities, that you have the right consistent security controls, and that any of those service accounts that get actually deployed is that we make sure that you have the ability of visibility, transparency, and actually make sure that you have a safe peace of mind that knowing that Dichotic has a secure and management of those service accounts for you.
Excellent. And then what about getting a trial or demo of Dichotic? How does that work?
Well, that's one of the things that we brought to the industry in privileged access management is that we actually took something that was so complex and something that was sometimes only available for the few large organizations that could afford it. And Dichotic really took the simplicity, easy to use, easy to get value out of it. And we have made privileged access management for everybody, whether you want it on-premise, you want it in the cloud, or you want it managed from as a managed service provider. So getting a cloud access and trial from Dichotic is as easy as going to a website and basically going through a few steps of submitting and registering for a trial, and you could probably be up and running within minutes. So Dichotic has brought privileged access to everybody at a price which is affordable for the world. So we pride and joy in making privileged access usable and making organizations reduce the risk of privilege compromise.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have in our live Q&A session. But Joseph, there's, I count 20 questions there in the folder for you. So a lot of interest, obviously, in Dichotic and how the solution works and does what it does. If you have time to answer a few of those, I'm sure the audience would appreciate it. But thank you so much for your expert presentation today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I'll go to the room and I'll answer as many questions as I possibly can. And people can also follow me on social media if they wish.
Excellent. Thank you, Joseph. And thank you to Dichotic for joining us on the event today. Don't forget to download the Dummies Guide to Privileged Access Cloud Security. It's right there in your audience console under the Handouts tab. It's the full ebook, so make sure that you get that before you go. It won't be as easily accessible after the event. And with that, it's now time for our next prize announcement. We have another Amazon $500 gift card. This is going to Jack Chan from Massachusetts. Congratulations, Jack Chan from Massachusetts. And now it's time for our next presenter on today's Cloud MegaCast. I'm excited to introduce Swaroop Sham, Group Product Marketing Manager at Octa. Swaroop, take it away.
Risk-based authentication, a modern SIAM approach to fight identity attacks. In today's webinar, we'll cover the evolution of authentication requirements, align risk with customer experience, and dive deep into risk-based authentication. And finally, we will explore the Octa platform for customer security and risk. So as an introduction, my name is Swaroop. I'm a Group Product Marketing Manager at Octa, focused on customer identity products. I know many of you are already familiar with Octa, but for those of you who are new, Octa is the Gartner NQ leader for identity and access management. We are the leader who has been placed here for multiple years in a row as the leader quadrant. It is this position, as well as our innovative products, that has led some of the largest organizations to trust Octa for their customer identity needs. Octa helps organizations like JetBlue, Adobe, Albertsons, LabCorp, Lurgin to secure and delight their customers with a frictionless authentication experience. With that context, we all know this is the age of the customer. Customers today engage with digital services with the mindset that give me what I want, when I want it, where I want it on any device. They are willing to spend their money based on their unique tastes and needs, but in the odd chance that their trust is ever compromised, they will abandon your product with a blink of an eye. This mindset has created some spectacular winners. The logos that you see here are not a surprise for many of you. Organizations that know how to delight their customers on any device at any time without friction. Companies like Amazon allow you to access the service with minimal friction, and that is what users want. But despite all of this, security continues to be a blocker. We know that 77% of online businesses prefer delivering a frictionless user experience, but they report that 58% of these organizations said that fraud and risk concerns stop them from meeting or delivering on this goal. Well, challenge is that most services still treat customers like a criminal due to the fear of fraud. This comic from a few years ago really explains some of the mindset in terms of passwords and the overall authentication experience. Beyond just passwords, we see stringent registration requirements, complex login steps, unclear communication during the login process, and many more as a hindrance to new customer experiences on how easy it is to log in while keeping the service secure. Despite all these stringent requirements, we know that the problem of fraud has had a meteoric rise. In Q3 of 2020, we had a report that showed that account takeover had a 281% increase. Attackers were still able to compromise credentials to gain access to an individual user's account to commit fraud. The question really then comes down to, what is it that sets the champions apart? How are some businesses able to offer services to customers without friction, without unnecessary hoops, and the risk of fraud impacting their bottom line? Well, when we talk to customers at Octa, we see a couple of key recurring themes across the customer identity landscape, and this is very particular to consumer security and fraud. Today, SIAM solutions like Octa play extensively in protecting against account takeover. How do we ensure and accurately validate the claimed identity so that we can give an authenticated session? Typical SIAM scenarios today. But when we look ahead, authentication as a concept itself is changing. The challenge comes down to how do we enable long-lived sessions without authentication based on the user's silently established identity and authentication attributes. Now, a classic example of this is, when is the last time any of you ever logged into your Uber account or your Lyft account? Rarely, right? So the businesses want to be able to offer this long-lived session where users no longer need to remember credentials, but somehow have the level of risk and assurance that the users expect and trust their service with. Customers are also willing to adapt and adopt new adaptive risk signals as a way to assess risk. They want to integrate identity operations with fraud orchestration to particularly secure customers through the account journey. This is at registration, at authentication, and at the point of transaction. Customers want to be able to use adaptive signals to assess the risk through the journey of the user. Now, I want to point out that we use the word adaptive risk interchangeably with the risk-based authentication and also behavioral authentication. In general, most companies still mean or refer to the same concept. So what happens? What are the strategic considerations for organizations when they think about dealing with risk? With these themes, the strategic considerations for dealing with risk typically include, first, the impact on user experience, the type and rate of fraud that they see, as well as existing tools they might already have in this ecosystem. Finally, last but not least, the total cost of ownership. It is very imperative that operational efficiency be gained by having all these systems work together without adding additional overhead and burden for already exhausted and stretched teams. So, the key concept we want to introduce here is the idea of CARTA. CARTA is stands for a continuous trust and assessment framework that has been adopted by Gartner. Gartner introduced this as a new strategic framework for information security and risk professionals and called this Continuous Adaptive Risk and Trust Assessment Framework. This new model is summarized with a few core principles that reflect the reality of securing a world where digital businesses can be accessed from anywhere by anyone from any device and where attackers continue to proliferate and innovate. Designed to address the shortcomings of existing customer identity and static security programs, CARTA is approached as one of the top security projects for multiple years now. CARTA's strategic approach requires continuous device visibility and automated control, as well as orchestration capabilities to operationalize security and risk management across the growing SIAM security vendor ecosystem. It builds upon Gartner's adaptive security architecture to shift security and risk management processes away from a single vendor and a single solution to a more agile, context-aware, and adaptive method. The CARTA approach requires continuous discovery, monitoring, assessment, and risk prioritization to get full visibility and context of risk, including prioritization of any security weaknesses that you might have. It includes, very, very importantly, at the center of its stack, adaptive attack and access protection. So with that being said, in practical terms, CARTA particularly has a reference for continuous authentication, which means making assessments across a defined set or a series of events, including session, browser-specific product changes, adding items to a cart, selecting items on a guest checkout, login, change of personal details, change of shipping address, maybe payment information, as well as adding a new payee, for example. CARTA tells you to continuously assess the risk of the session based on all these different events. As the levels of trust and risk are assessed for each of these events, they can then be compared against thresholds defined within the organizational policy or compliance guidelines. A combination of rule-based and machine learning-based analytics should then be applied to the rich data available from a full spectrum of tools and capabilities deployed. If any of the risk thresholds are exceeded at a given point of time, CARTA recommends that the orchestration platform can trigger the appropriate response. These responses could be from blocking the user, stepping up the user, maybe adding additional checks. These are all valid mechanisms in the CARTA approach. So Gartner says that by 2023, digital businesses that have not leveraged a framework like Carta that leverage adaptive authentication for the customer experience, for trust and risk assessments, will earn 15% more than those who don't. So I state that again. Digital businesses that have adopted the customer experience linked to trust and risk assessments will earn 15% more than those who don't. So pretty compelling reasons for why you should consider an adaptive authentication based approach. So how do you build a better approach to trust your customers? So for us at Octa, we have been thinking about this problem pretty extensively. And when we think about building and aligning with risk and building a stack and technology framework, we at Octa think of a number of different approaches, particularly with a Carta-driven mindset. First, we think about native capabilities in the product that can successfully authenticate the user at any point of the user journey. So the question becomes, is the user trusted? Can we trust the location they're trying to get access from? Can we trust the network or the IP information? And are they coming in from a known device? But very importantly, do all these attributes look like the normal behavioral patterns of that user? These all form the positive correlation signals of an individual user. Now, when we layer that up with the global insight of all the threats impacting across a huge network of spectrum of Octa customers, we have a good sense of what positive attributes can look like, as well as negative attributes. But finally, as the Carta framework points out, individual solutions cannot operate in isolation. That is why we have the third column to the right, which is the third-party security and fraud stack, that allows us to integrate security solutions from across the spectrum, from across different points in the user journey, from across different elements and layers in the stack, to really build out a comprehensive risk assessment framework and a risk assessment technology piece. So on the third component, solutions like Octa can integrate with all the solutions that you might have in conjunction with a solution like Octa, like a WAF, a bot detection solution, an IP reputation system, a transactional signaling system, user behavior signals, as well as any custom fraud solutions that you might have. We know that a lot of institutions have their own risk assessments. You might have taken an open source machine learning model and built out your own risk signals into that. Well, we want to be that orchestration layer that is able to ingest the signals from all these different components, the positive signals, the risk signals, as well as any third-party solution, so that you can drive authentication and authorization orchestration through the identity and access management solution. So what does this mean? This means that when someone is trying to change personal credentials or a personal profile page, based on the risk assessment done at that point of time, you could either allow the user, where we believe a majority of users might fall in. We might be able to step up the user when we see some elevated amount of risk, or we might even deny access for that user to change that individual operation inside of the Octa platform. This is the power of building a stack aligned with risk. So, in order to build this stack, we have spent out a large amount of time building out a modern platform that can give you all this capability as well as all the integration opportunities across your entire portfolio, across every channel that your customer might authenticate against. A solution like Octa is partnered with all the major third-party solutions you might deploy with, as well as building out strong native capabilities to give you this ability. So let us look at each of these components of the platform in detail to understand what is really possible. Well, as the title suggests, having a rich set of risk-based authentication capability is critical to a platform like ours. So that is why we've thought through a number of different families of signals that, as an identity and access management provider, we have to consider natively in the platform to assess either the native authentication request at the time of login or during the session that might exist. So Octa is able to analyze the group attributes of the user, as well as device level attributes, IP information, network level information, as well as threat information about the individual user's session. Well, That is pretty powerful if you ask me. But then these signals alone mean nothing. The real question comes down to what can you do when you apply these signals for your policies? That is where the next level comes into the Octa platform, where we built out a machine learning layer which is able to ingest all these signals that are native to the Octa platform into the engine and have an assessment of risk. Now this allows you to decide whether to allow the user in if it's a low risk user, or block the user if you see an elevated amount of risk. Now this is also a time in which you could feed in additional signals into the machine learning platform from other third-party solutions you might have. Or it could even be scores or already analyzed risk output into the machine learning platform to have a comprehensive view of the risk associated with an individual user. Well, tying it all together, what happens is that behind the risk analysis engine, when you combine all these components together and you think about what a traditional IAM vendor can do with the behavioral signals as well as signals from third-party solutions, we have a real-time ability to orchestrate session access. Octa can, if Octa because we are the identity and access management vendor, if we detect an elevated amount of risk associated with the user, Octa can then reduce access to that particular service or could block the individual user from accessing a particular service. This becomes very, very powerful because in many times identity is the primary orchestration point that you might want to think when you go through a Carta-driven exercise. So with that, we want to kind of point out, as you guys go back and think about the opportunities presented with a solution, a risk-based authentication solution, as well as a SIAM solution, and when you think about adopting a modern Carta-driven mindset to protecting the user, it's very important to think through what the outcomes can be for your business. First, from a security perspective, we think that we add a lot of defense in depth, as well as a lot of richness into the trust model across the user journey so that we know we can stop fraud at any point of time. We can avoid security blind spots by connecting all the security tools into a single orchestration layer. This provides comprehensive, bulletproof security. But going beyond security, we also think this can define the user experience. We all started off this presentation by talking about the age of the customer. And the age of the customer is defined by the quality of the user experience that the customer sees. And we think that when we think about all the different security risk signals that are ingested into a platform like Octa, and when you think about it from a positive mindset that you have a strong positive correlation with the claimed identity of a user, you now have the option to reduce the amount of friction for that user when you know it is truly that trusted user. You can also align access requirements with risk, right? So if someone is trying to access from a mobile device, maybe you can offer them a limited set of operations compared to a desktop or a known device. It gives you a lot of abilities to control the user experience. And finally, from a business strategy standpoint, you can not only reduce fraud rates, but also hopefully reduce the drop-offs due to authentication friction or MFA challenges. With that, I've come to the end of my section. Hopefully all of you will review and take some time to understand the principles behind Carta and the power that a platform like Octa can give in leveraging adaptive or risk-based signals into the platform to drive a secure but delightful user experience for customers. With that, we'll be happy to take some additional questions.
Great presentation, Swaroop. Thank you so much. We do have some questions for you from the audience. While we do that, I've just brought up a poll question I want to call everyone's attention to. Simple question: what additional information would you like about the Octa solution? So a lot of good questions coming in. Swaroop, are you ready for some questions?
Ready as ever. Let's go.
All right, excellent. So let's see, first question that came in I wanted to ask you is, what type of phone-based risk authenticators does Octa leverage?
That's a great question, by the way.
So I assume that the person asking the question is focused on the adaptive aspect of it, because that is one of the richness that phone-based authenticators provide. So natively speaking, we definitely leverage a lot of signals that we can capture from our mobile device. So that includes things like IP, network, location, geolocation, travel patterns, and all of those pieces. But even beyond that, and this really speaks to the power of the Octa platform, we allow you to bring in any third-party, risk-based solution that you might leverage. For example, one very common solution that a lot of customers, especially in the consumer identity realm, leverage is device fingerprinting solutions. The folks like Threatmetrics or iovation, it's pretty common. So if you're using any device fingerprinting vendor for your fraud mitigation strategy or your account protection strategy, you can use that in the Octa platform. You can just submit that you can submit a score, you can submit a signal, pretty powerful way to leverage the best of both what an identity provider provides as well as what a device fingerprinting solution, for example, can submit as well. Now, going beyond that, we know a lot of vendors also use solutions like BioCatch and BehaviorSec that do a lot of very interesting ideas, including things like, what's your screen tilt? How fast do you type on the particular mobile device? Now, those are things that we don't do natively, but again, you can submit that into the Octa platform. And when you go back to that earlier slide and talk about the power of the Octa's platform by ingesting third-party risk feeds into Octa, that's another way you can work with phone factors in Octa. Beyond that, also assume that if it's just not a risk-based authentication question, Octa has a number of phone-based multi-factor options. Things like OTP tokens. We have an SDK, and even beyond that, things like Face ID, Touch ID, support all of those pieces. So to kind of tie this all together and bring it all, if you're planning to use your phone as a huge assurance provider for an authentication to stop fraud, we have a number of ways you can leverage that in the Octa platform.
Very nice. Very nice. Let's see, another question that came in. They're asking, do you factor typing cadence when evaluating risk-based authentication?
So that's a good question. It actually goes back to my earlier example I provided about, specialized vendors like BehaviorSec and BehaviorSec and BioCatch. So these vendors specialize in that area. We have some native capability, but we particularly recommend customers to go down the route of integrating with third-party solutions here. The reason is that there's a lot of, as in we did some experimentation, we saw a lot of variance based on different countries, languages. There's a lot of different patterns, and it becomes harder to address the needs of every different region and dialect in the world. So from a typing cadence perspective, we recommend leveraging specialized partners there.
Excellent. And then I like this question here from Doug. He's asking, is there a training program or certification program that would help me to master the Octa product? What do you recommend in that area?
Yes, actually, in fact, we do. We do have a couple of certification programs. I think they actually go like most other companies, like a college kind of model where I think you have an Octa 101, 201, and 301, as well as courses for developers who want to leverage the Octa platform and they're building native apps or custom apps. So you can, if you go to the Octa website and go to our education sublink, you should find more information there, and you can get a lot of information on how to learn more about the Octa platform.
Very nice. Greg is asking, will Carta get rid of my stress medication? I like that question. But seriously, how can Carta really help a company like Greg's, perhaps?
Yeah, that's a great. I wish we could cure everything, including stress medication. It's a good thought process there, because if you think about Carta, the way Gartner talks about Carta is particularly it's a security framework, and the cool part about Carta is that it can be applied across the board. When I was coming in, I heard a previous speaker speak about Zero Trust. I think of Zero Trust as an implementation of Carta, And similarly, you can actually extend Carta to SIAM applications as well. So in essence, Carta can be deployed as a philosophy, as a design philosophy for different use cases. And hopefully, when we take this kind of Carta-centric approach to securing both external-facing applications, the consumer applications, as well as internal applications through Zero Trust, you have a very comprehensive approach to reduce some of the risks that you might see for these applications out there. So we hopefully will get to reducing your stress in some way.
Excellent. Another question here, Vikas, I believe is how you pronounce it, says that their organization has adopted a remote work strategy with the pandemic. I'm sure a lot of companies have. How can Octa help for organizations that are moving more towards remote work?
Oh yeah, that's a very good question. In fact, looking at the broader Octa business, we have helped a number of companies move towards a more remote workforce, or quickly adopt with the remote workforce kind of situation that we all live in right now. So I think fundamentally speaking, a huge use case for a solution like Octa is to enable remote workers to access from any network, anywhere, any location. Identity becomes the center point of that discussion. So Octa, through some of the features I discussed, as well as additional features we have in the Octa product, we have helped a number of companies build a zero trust model, which is very, very ideal for the remote workforce use case. But the power of Octa doesn't just end at providing a zero trust architecture to enable your workers, but we also have a lot of capability for change in remote process, right? We know that you no longer have that IT help desk anymore, where people can go in and get their credentials reset or enroll in a factor. A lot of what Octa can do can also help you deal with the change in processes that have come about because of COVID-19 or a remote workforce. So there's a number of different ways. I highly recommend reaching out to someone with Octa that you work with, anyone with Octa that you work with, and going through the individual use cases there.
Excellent. And then a question from Chris here. He says he has a lot of questions. How do I know if Octa is a good fit for my company? Would you recommend he just try it out? And if so, what's the kind of the process around that?
Oh yeah. So there's a number of ways to get started with Octa. So the first thing is that we have a free trial on our website. Go ahead, sign up for Octa, Octa.com. You should see a button on the homepage about a free trial. You could get started within minutes playing with Octa. So that's a great reason for you to start playing and get a feel for the product to sense if this meets your business needs. Another great place I would recommend highly is to look at some of our customer stories. Octa today supports companies of every size in the world. We have, we support a lot of fast-growing commercial companies all the way up to some of the largest organizations, right? Companies like JetBlue use us across the board. Companies like Experian, Albertsons use us across the board. So you might see a lot of stories that you might relate to. So highly recommend checking out our customer stories and testimonials on our website. It'll give you a good sense of how Octa can help you and how you can get started on that Octa journey.
Awesome. Well, Swaroop, I'm afraid that's all the time we have in our live Q&A session here, but a really excellent presentation. Thank you so much for being on the event today.
Thank you for having me on.
And thank you to Octa, of course, for supporting today's event. Visit Octa.com. Also check out there in the Handouts tab, there is a paper on overcoming customer identity challenges without compromising the user experience by Octa and IDG. So make sure that you check that out as well. And with that, it's time for our next prize announcement. We have an Amazon $500 gift card going to Linda Freed from Colorado. Congratulations. And our next grand prize, a Microsoft Surface tablet, going to Tony Young from Nebraska. Congratulations to all the prize winners. More prize announcements coming up throughout the event, so stay tuned. And with that, it's time to keep the MegaCast moving here. I'm excited to introduce you now to our next presenter. Welcome, Suhassnayak, Director of Product Marketing at Clumio. Suhas, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on. Take it away.
All right, sounds good. Okay, so today we would like to talk to you about why is it important to secure your data in an all cloud world, right? So it's really important. It gets complex. It's not that easy. We all get to the cloud to simplify our workflow and to get to our end goals and objectives in a simple and fast manner. But as you do that, you'll see that there are certain areas that become complex and expensive as well, and data protection is one of them. So I want to walk through that journey of a typical enterprise customer and how Clumio comes to solve those problems for them, right? So, okay, so let me, as the next step, paint a typical journey of the enterprise as we see at Clumio, right? So, for example, if there is a customer, that has a decent on-premises presence, meaning they have, like, say, a data center, they typically these days have a cloud-first mandate in the company, right? And so as a first step, they could be looking at, adopting various SaaS applications. And the intent here is to get a value very quickly out of those applications, right? You don't have to develop your own applications, and most of this work is done for you. So that's one way of making that first step towards the cloud. The second one that we are seeing is that you are shifting some of your VM environments into the cloud, for example, in VMC on AWS. And what you're doing here is that you are offloading the infrastructure piece and the overhead that comes with managing that infrastructure to the cloud, right? So that's another way that we are seeing our customers move to the cloud. The other option is that they are basically doing lift and shift or moving their non-production workloads such as test and dev to the cloud, right? So again, it is offloading a whole bunch of infrastructure overhead. And there is a little bit of refactoring that they'll have to do to their applications, but they still don't have to manage all the infrastructure that they have been managing on premises, right? So that's the next step. And then you'll see that beyond this, now they are getting more and more into the cloud, where they are even offloading a lot of the platform-related developments that they were doing on-prem. For example, in AWS, they'll start adopting RDS, for example, to offload the database management overheads as well, and completely focus on the applications that's core to their business. Right, so that's the typical enterprise cloud journey, if you will, that we are seeing within our customer base. And as you can see that, and by the way, that the whole digital transformation that's happening and has been accelerated by the pandemic, we are seeing that more and more of the customers are rushing to get to the cloud. And as they rush into the cloud and as they start adopting different applications and different modes and methods of getting to the cloud, what we are seeing is that it is opening up a lot of challenges, and the data is now dispersed across multiple clouds, multiple tools, multiple applications, and it brings up a whole bunch of complexity as well as vulnerability as far as data is concerned. Number one, a lot of the customers, as they're going through this journey, take a pause and say that, oh boy, now, am I dragging all the complexity that I was dealing with on-prem to the cloud? And as a result of that, am I really getting all the value out of cloud or not? That's one. Second is, let's say they had a great data protection mechanism that worked on-prem for them. Now, all of a sudden, they have to kind of rebuild those capabilities to make sure that their data is not susceptible to ransomware attacks, for example, right? So how do they make sure that they build those capabilities back in the cloud is a challenge. And last but not the least, now, as they move all their data into the cloud, and let's say they even back it up, it's just a backup. I mean, everyone wants to get more insights out of their data so that they can, have an advantage over the competition in their business and in their core strategic areas. But they're not doing that anymore in the cloud. It's just a backup. It's just an insurance policy, right? So they would like to do more with that data as well. So these are a lot of the challenges that we are seeing that our customers are facing in this journey to cloud, especially when it comes to data protection for their various data sources. So when it comes to Clumio, what we decided to do is solve exactly those problems that our customers are faced with. It's one single backup as a service or a platform that consolidates all the data from private, public applications in the cloud, as well as SaaS applications in one single platform. And it basically is a single pane of glass, if you will, that will be used by our customers to back up data from different data sources, set policies across them, and also keep a tab on whether they are compliant or not, right? So it's designed all in the cloud, natively in the cloud, and it scales infinitely because it is using all the resources in the cloud. So our customers can, start with a very small requirement to begin with, and then keep adding multiple data sources, go to multiple cloud, and the service will just scale in the background, right? So that's what we did. And just to talk to you about the core tenets in our products, right? Number one, as I said, that data protection is really, really complex in the cloud. So we want to eliminate all the complexity, make it extremely simple to manage. And with Clumio, you can be up and running in like less than 15 minutes and get a completely air-gapped data protection, which I'll get to in a bit as to why it's important. In just 15 minutes, you have no hardware or infrastructure to set up or manage, no additional software to set up as well, no additional networking gear to protect your primary data from, passing on any compromises to your backup data, right? So none of that. It's all handled by Clumio, and you can be up and running in less than 15 minutes. From a cost point of view as well, we are seeing that as people are trying to build the backup solutions in the cloud and provide all the air gap protections, their costs are going up as well. And with Clumio, as I mentioned, it scales from a very small data that you want to back up all the way up to thousands of VMs or EBS volumes in AWS. So you can start really small. You don't have to do any sizing up front, and you pay based on what you consume, nothing more, nothing less. So it's purely based on the gigabytes or the terabytes that you consume or the VMs that you protect, and there are no additional infrastructure charges. There's just one Clumio bill that you have to worry about. And and as well, there are no charges for restores or egress charges as well. So no hidden charges. It's completely based on the data that you're consuming. And so we want to keep it really simple. Want to make sure that it's extremely predictable and there are no surprises when it comes to your costs, and that the solution scales on demand, right? Last but not the least, we want to make sure that even the platform is meeting all the security requirements, and I'll get to that in the details later on in the slide here, in the deck here. But what I mean by that is that even the platform, the way it accesses your data sources and backs it up in the Clumio service is all done compliant with the latest and greatest security certifications. And we make sure that both the data at rest as well as in transit is encrypted, okay? So those are the key tenets of our product. And then in the later part of this presentation from here on, I want to highlight what the differences are between a backup solution that's done right for the cloud and things that may leave you vulnerable to attacks, right? So not all backups are created equal. Let me get into that a little bit. One, I want to highlight how big a problem ransomware is today, just to kind of shed light on the gravity of this problem. So just in the last 10 months, for example, 140 local governments, police stations, schools, and hospitals have been held hostage by ransomware. And the CISA, or the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, is predicting that in this year, almost like in every 11 seconds, you'll have one organization that will fail victim to a ransomware attack, right? So it's a big problem, and no one is safe from this particular attack. So, but why is it not enough just to have a backup? Why can't you just recover if you have a backup from a ransomware attack, right? The problem here is before the hacker encrypts your primary data or your production workload, for example, they are spending a whole lot of time on the network, like almost like 200 days before they actually hold your data hostage. And what they're doing during this time is they're trying to hunt for your backup copy, right? Because they want to, once they hold your primary data hostage, they want to make sure that they have compromised your backup copy as well, and there's no other way for you to recover from this attack, right? So that's why it's not enough to have any backup solution. You want to make sure that you have the right backup solution to protect yourself from these attacks. And so how does Clumio help in these attacks? Number one, we provide an air gap protection, and I'll get to what an air gap protection is, but in a nutshell, what it means is that your backup copy is in a completely different sphere or infrastructure as compared to your primary data. So even if, let's say, your primary account gets compromised, there isn't a way for the hacker to get into your infrastructure that the backup copy is residing in. So it's a completely different sphere from a security point of view and from a networking point of view. So how do you have that backup solution that has air gap protection, and how do you quickly provide that protection as well? So we do provide air gap protection, and as I said, you can get this up and running in 15 minutes to protect all your primary and production workloads. That's one. The next one is it's equally important that anytime you are, let's say your primary data is compromised, you should not only have a backup copy that's secure, but it's equally important for you to come back up and running very quickly because that's important for you to have business continuity. So we provide flexible and granular restores. What I mean by that is across all the different data sources that Clumio is protecting, you should be able to say that, hey, I want to just bring in this EBS volume or this VM and restore it, right? Rather than restoring the entire backup for the last several days, for example, because that enables you to be back up and running ASAP. So that's one. The next piece is rapid recovery. They go hand in hand. So you should be able to do flexible restores, and at the same time, it should be extremely efficient and fast as well. And I'll get into the details over here, but in a nutshell, what it means is that we do a comparison between your compromised data and the last backup instance, and we only rehydrate the blocks that have changed. So, for example, if let's say the production VM, for example, only 1% of the blocks had changed in the failed copy, we will just rehydrate 1% of the blocks. So both flexible restores and rapid recovery help you in getting back up and running extremely quick, which is very important, often an overlooked capability. But I think it's even more important. And last but not the least, as I mentioned, security is really important when it comes to the solution or the platform itself. It's not just about backing up your data in a secure manner, but ensuring that the platform or the solution is designed and architected securely as well. How hard is it to compromise the platform itself? Are the accesses to your data sources secure? Those things are equally important, and we take that very seriously. And I'll go through all the different certifications that we have and all the different features that we have built into the platform to provide this security as well. Okay, so let's start with air gap. And what I kind of wanted to show all the different things that happen when you have to provide an air gap architecture, say, on premises. Typically, you have a backup solution that's doing the backup for your primary workloads. And then to do an air gap protection, you typically have to invest in a separate site because you want to make sure that it's not in the same environment so that if your primary data gets compromised, the hackers can't access your backup data, right? So you have to typically invest in a new site. There's invariably additional hardware that you have to invest in, and it brings up a lot of complexity because it's a completely different network that you have to manage as well. So it adds up complexity, adds up to your costs, and it becomes extremely difficult to manage such an architecture. Additionally, if let's say you are backing up to the cloud, in addition to all the complexity, you will now start incurring egress charges if you have to restore the data back from the cloud to one of your sites. And last but not the least, if depending upon how the backup solution is architected, if you're using say S3 buckets to store your data, it can be extremely slow from a recovery point of view as well. And so it may take you days or months sometimes to get back up and running, which is not good as well, right? So how do we solve that problem? When it comes to Clumio, it's not like you have to do anything additional to get an air-gapped architecture, right? It's there by default. When we back up your data, let's take an example. Let's say you have an account in AWS and you want to back up your EBS volumes, for example, right? When we back up those volumes in the Clumio service, by default, it is air-gapped. And what I mean by that is that it's on a completely different security sphere, completely different account, and there is no path or route from you as an admin when you're logged into your AWS account to have access through those credentials into the Clumio service. So you get that by default, and guess what? You don't have to invest in any additional accounts, any additional infrastructure or software. It's all part of the backup service that we provide. So extremely simple, and you can restore also from the Clumio service to any other account. So if one of your accounts gets compromised, you can now use the Clumio backup copy to restore it to a different account in the AWS, or by the way, you can even restore it to an on-prem location as well. So that's the difference between an air-gap solution that's probably done on premises in a legacy way, but has a lot of gaps when it comes to, or challenges when it comes to be utilized for your data in the cloud, right? So that's the advantage that Clumio has, because it's just built natively in the cloud, and it scales very quickly to provide a quick way to back up as well as restore your data in an air-gap manner. Next, I wanted to show all the different granular restores that we do from our backup as well. For example, you can say that, hey, I want to just get that specific file and restore it into my primary workload, for example, or production workload. We can do that. You can do at a directory level or a VM or EC2 level. In fact, we can also directly query our data lake and get a specific table or record from your database and say that, okay, just recover this particular entry, for example. So that's the level of fine-grained granular restores that we can make happen in Clumio. And for our Microsoft 365 accounts that we are backing up, you can search specific mailboxes or even email accounts, and again, bring in data from just those mailboxes or email accounts that you want to. And all this helps in reducing the time to recover a failed copy or a compromised account, for example, right? So that's the granular restores. And additionally, I want to go through an example here which shows why we are able to do rapid recovery as well, right? So let's say in this example, VMDK1, fails. It goes through either a random deletion, incorrect deletion that happens in it, or it gets compromised. Whatever may be the case, but it's compromised, it's failed, right? So what we do as a first step is we create a clone of VMDK1 in your production environment so that you have that copy to do analysis and see what might have gone wrong, which is a pretty cool functionality. And then what we do is we create an instance of that VMDK in our Clumio service, and we spin up a whole bunch of compute in the cloud, because for us, whether we spin up hundreds or thousands of compute instances in parallel or whether we do it in sequence, it's the same thing. It doesn't cost us anything extra. So we spin up a lot of compute instances in parallel and quickly create the VMDK copy. And not only that, we identify all the blocks that had changed between the primary VMDK that failed and the last good backup copy, right? And we only rehydrate those blocks that are different. So as I mentioned earlier, let's say only like 5% of the blocks in VMDK had changed since the last backup. We'll only rehydrate those 5% of the blocks. So again, it saves bandwidth, it saves time, and it just brings you up and running in a very quick manner. So both combined with flexible granular access and rapid recovery, what we are ensuring is that you don't just have a secure backup copy, but you are back up and running extremely quickly, both equally important, right? So that's that. And then last but not the least, just wanted to show all the different certifications that our platform has gone through. As shown on the slide, we've gone through ISO 27001. We are compliant with PCI DSS, HIPAA, as well as SOC 2 Type 1 and Type 2 certifications. And not just that, the other important security functionalities that we have just inbuilt into the platform is that the backup copy that's in the Clumio service is immutable, meaning even for whatever reason, let's say if someone has access to it, I mean, it could be a bad actor, it could be someone that, you know, just wants to cause harm in the organization itself. Even if you have admin rights, that particular copy is immutable. You can't change it, right? As I mentioned, it's end-to-end encrypted both at rest as well as in flight. You can encrypt the backup copy using a key of your own or something that's generated by Clumio. And then it goes through multiple levels of authentication to set up users in the system as well. And we have various levels of access controls. And what I mean by that is, as an admin, you can say that a specific user can have only access to, say, EBS volumes in your account or VMs running on VMC in AWS. So you can strictly control the type of access that you can provide for different users in your organization. And last but not the least, there isn't a delete button. And what I mean by that is, even as an admin, if you want to really delete a copy, it has to go through multiple levels of authentications, as well as it needs approvals from 2 different people. So it's really hard to compromise or change the backup copy or even delete it. So those are all the different aspects that we have built into the platform to make it extremely hard, if not impossible, to compromise the backup copy. Okay, and let's see. Okay, so just rounding this off, one of the questions that we have from our customers is that they have a backup solution already, but let's say it's not having air gap or it doesn't have a good way to protect them from ransomware type of attacks. So how can we help them in that situation, right? So for that specific use case, we have a product called Ransom Protect. And what this is that it is an add-on to your existing backup solution. You get 30 days retention, and it's your data is, or the data sources that you decide to protect using Ransom Protect is then just backed up into the Clumio service, and you can go back up to 30 days, and it's all air-gapped. So this is a quick way for you to add air-gap protection to your existing backup solution using Ransom Protect. And again, as I said, it's extremely quick to get up and running. It literally takes less than 15 minutes. And just for you to get a feel for it, I mean, it's best for you to see these things in action. So we have a 30-day free trial that we are running on Ransom Protect, for example. So you can just go to the link that's displayed on your screen. It's sas.clumio.com/try-free. And you'll be presented with a form where we'll ask for a few basic questions just to understand the different data sources that you would like to protect, and you'll be provided with an easy way to get a Clumio service or instance running in your environment and protecting the right data sources that you want to protect. So yeah, I would say I highly encourage you guys to take this for a test drive, if you will. It's, as I said, super simple, very quick to get up and running and add this air gap functionality even on your existing backup solution. So let's see, and that was the last slide I had, David. And at this point, I guess I'll open it up for any questions that you may have.
Absolutely, yeah, great presentation, Suhas. We do have some questions for you. While we do that, I'm just going to bring up this poll for everyone out there in the audience. And the poll on the screen says, what additional information would you like about Clumio? So we'll leave that up. I encourage everyone to answer that. We've got a lot of great questions coming in. Let's see. First question I'll start with, Suhas, is can I manage all my AWS accounts in various regions in one view, or do I need to have a separate Clumio instance per account?
Yeah, great question. So yes, the answer is yes, because it is a single Clumio account that works across multiple accounts and regions, and if you will, provides that single pane of glass for you to protect all your data, have complete control over the statuses and the policies across your different data sources that you're protecting. And that was the whole intent. We wanted to simplify data protection in the cloud across different accounts, across multi-clouds and different regions as well. So yeah, you don't have to have multiple accounts or multiple instances running per account. The whole intent over here is to simplify data protection for you in the cloud, and you can do all that through just one Clumio account, if you will. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I like that. Great answer. Next question they asked here, they say this solution sounds awesome for AWS, but can I do a lot of this with snapshots today already myself?
Yeah, awesome question. So yeah, you can do, with the native AWS data protection that you have, you can do operational recovery with snapshots, but it does not provide you with several things. One, which was the focus of this presentation, is that it doesn't provide you with air gap protection. And what I mean by that is that the snapshots are created in the same AWS account. So if your AWS account gets compromised, your snapshots will get compromised as well. That's one. Snapshots, the native snapshots functionality doesn't provide you with long-term retention or a solution to meet your compliance requirements. So if you need that, it will fall short. Then there is no granular access to files or, say, specific VMs, EBS volumes, etc. Right? So that's a shortcoming as well. So it's great for operational recovery, but then, as I mentioned, it has several shortcomings, which is why we are trying to solve all those problems that our customers are faced with Clumio. And we are seeing that some of the customers will end up writing complex scripts to maybe make use of the native snapshot capabilities that are there in AWS, but it gets harder to maintain as you add more or new data sources as well as new accounts. And also by saving snapshots across multiple accounts, you can probably add a level of security, but it'll double up your costs, right? And it's still not completely air gap, meaning if, let's say, you or the admin who has access to both these accounts, you can leave a door open for the hackers to gain entry into those other accounts as well. So yeah, you really cannot have a complete and clean solution even after adding a lot of complexity and cost.
Excellent. Well, I'm afraid we're running out of time here in our live Q&A session. I guess final question we have time for, if folks go to the trial, they sign up for it, can you kind of tell us what happens after that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, it's a very simple form, and we ask for some basic information just to understand the different data sources that you would be interested in protecting. And based on that, we will help you with spinning up a Clumio service or instance, you'll get a link in your email with the detailed information, and you'll be up and running in no time.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for Q&A. There's a lot more, maybe more technical questions I've stored for you or kept for you there in the folder under Clumio. Suhas, thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. Appreciate it.
And thank you to Clumio for supporting today's event. Check out the Handouts tab for additional information on Clumio, and don't forget to go sign up for the trial yourself and see Clumio in action. Again, thank you for all the excellent questions that have come in. We'll be routing those to the Clumio team. And with that, it's time for our next prize announcement. We have another Amazon $500 gift card. This is going to Julio Lao Chen from California. Congratulations, Julio Lao Chen from California. We still have 3 more grand prizes and 3 more gift cards to give out on the event today, so make sure you stay tuned for those. And with that, I'm excited to introduce you to our next presenter on today's Cloud MegaCast. Welcome, Mr. Rob Rodriguez, Director of Field Engineering at Firemon. Rob, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah. It's great to have you, Rob. All right, I've got that on the screen. I want to call everyone's attention to this poll. The question is, in 2021, to what extent is your company accelerating its IT infrastructure transition to cloud? I'll just leave that on the screen there for a moment. I'll share the results of this with you, and you can kind of see how you stack up with your peers on the event today. After all, that's today's topic: ensuring trust and security in enterprise IT and cloud. So the answers there, are accelerating significantly, accelerating slightly, shifting at the same pace, or slowing down, or freezing.
What we're seeing here is about 20% of the people are slowing down or freezing projects. So that means about 80% of the people are keeping at the same pace or accelerating what they're doing in the cloud. So we're definitely in the right place, definitely in the right megacast today for that.
Yeah.
So, so I'm going to go on and move to the slides here. Let me see. Here we go. So I'm Rob Rodriguez. I'm a director at Firemon, director of engineering at Firemon. I've been here about 3 years. Before I came to Firemon, though, I was a network security guy for years. In fact, I've been out of the military for about 20 years now. My very first job out of the military was in network security. I've bounced back and forth to different places in IT over that time, but I've always come back to security. It's always been a love of mine, something I'd like to do. About 3 years ago, I took that plunge, came over and came to work for Firemon. I used the products for years, doing really, really good stuff with them. I've seen a lot of success in my day-to-day using Firemon, so came over and worked with them. And that's where we are now. So I'm really, really honored to be here with you guys today. There's a lot of you on this call. I know it's busy. It's the beginning of the year. You have a lot of things to do. You can be in a lot of different places. So thank you for your time today, for joining us. What we're talking about is kind of 3 ways to reduce risk in your cloud environment. And we're talking mainly about cloud today, but every single thing I'm talking about, it's the same in your on-prem environment. So whenever we talk about cloud, we could be talking about the hybrid network as well, because I'm looking at it from both perspectives. Almost everybody out there has at least something in the cloud and at least something on-prem, and we're trying to secure both of those. So right here on this slide, I'm not going to read these slides to you. You can read them if you want. But this slide talks about complexity. This slide talks about the complexity, mainly in the cloud, has exploded lately. It's crazy trying to secure everything. There's a lot of stuff going on in the cloud. And we as security professionals or network professionals are expected to secure that as we go. I had a customer, one of my bigger customers, their quote to me when they called us in to say, "Hey, Firemon, can you help us out with what we're doing?" And their quote to me was that they put the no their department put the no in innovation. So their company was trying to move quickly. Their company was trying to pivot. Their company was trying to do different things. And the security department, the network department, was the one stopping them. They were the ones causing slowdowns and different things from being rolled out because they wanted to make sure it was done securely, which is our job. So there are a lot of things going on. Cloud is getting more and more complex as we go. And not just that, we have a lot of different corporate imperatives that we have to adhere to. There's a lot of different things that people want to do. There's a lot of innovation going on, and we want to make sure that we're not that stopgap, that our department is not that stopgap. We want to make sure that we're enabling business to move at the speed that they need to without sacrificing that security piece. And that's kind of where we are right now in the middle of everything. And it's not just what it used to be, and it's not just like when I said I started 20-something years ago, where I had like a couple of firewalls and we were looking at them manually and making changes one by one. It's not that anymore. We don't have that luxury anymore of just having a firewall or two or three. Now we have branch offices and SD-WAN and SASE and cloud. There's all these different things that we have to take a look at and that we have to know about in order to secure them. And on top of that, there's not enough of us. If any of you guys out there, if any of the people on the phone right now are fully staffed or say that they're overstaffed, let me know. That's great. I've dealt with hundreds of companies in my time as fireman, and never have I ever heard anybody say that we have enough people. We're doing great over here, and everybody's fully trained on what they're doing. Usually it's we're a short man. There's not enough of us. And all these new technologies are coming out, the SASE, the SD-WAN, the cloud, and we don't really get training on them. We just have to try to figure it out as we go. So things are hard. Things are not easy. Business wants to move faster. We have a complexity gap. We have more and more that we need to do. So what do we do? That's kind of the question. And I'll tell you, so like I said, I've been a fireman for 3 years, but for the 7 years before that, I worked at the Fortune 500. I was in charge of security there. And I inherited an environment that wasn't the greatest, we'll say. They didn't really have much of a security department. Before that, they had a couple guys, but they were trying to make it better. And so we inherited firewalls that had thousands of rules that nobody knew what they did. We inherited routers and switches with ACLs in them that made no sense and that were just spaghetti. So we had to reduce that risk. We had to figure out what was going on. We had to reduce that risk, trying to figure out how we can make sure things stayed secure, how we can move at the speed of business without sacrificing anything that we needed to do. And so we tried to figure out what is that low-hanging fruit? What are the easy things we can do? Let's go back to the basics. There's tons of technologies out there that purport to help us. Let's go back to the basics. And if you've been around this field for a while, you've probably seen this. You've probably done this. If you've ever dealt with the critical controls from like SANS or anything, that's basically what this is. It's not revolutionary. It's not paradigm breaking, but it works. And if you do these things today, you're setting yourself up for an easier and better tomorrow. So those three things: reduce risk in your hybrid environments. One is we're going to talk about getting visibility into everything. You can't secure what you don't know. And then we're going to talk about reducing that threat. Then we're going to start talking about how to automate things to take that human factor out of there. And I am going to go quick. So if you have questions, you can ask them in the chat. But that very first one is make sure that we have visibility into everything. A good analogy here is it's people talk about cyber visibility, but it's the same thing when it comes to physical visibility. If I owned apartment buildings and I tasked you and said, hey, I need you to go protect all my apartment buildings. And you said, okay, where are they? And I said, I don't really know where all of them are. There's some over here, some over here. You can talk to this guy. That would make your job really hard. And that's what we're dealing with in IT. We're being told we need to secure every single thing that's out there, and we don't know what's out there. And we might not be in charge of everything that's out there. We may not be in charge of the cloud piece, but we still have to secure it. We may not be in charge like the SASE piece or the SD-WAN piece, but we still have to secure it. So we need that complete visibility into everything that's in our environment. Now, I'm not going to talk about technologies today. There's a lot of great technologies out there to scan, a lot of great network discovery tools. The cloud has a lot of native tools in there that will help you understand what's out there. But what you do want to find is something that's going to concatenate all that into one place. So you can see here, this is Fireman has a discovery tool. This is real life numbers, examples from customers that we've seen. And if we go to that very left one, you see where it says government here. This was a government entity. They presumed they had about 150,000 endpoints. Went in, did a scan, they had about 170,000 for like a 12% difference. And you see all the way across the different sectors of healthcare and high tech and finance. And finance is interesting because they thought they had about 600,000 and they had 1.2 million different endpoints. That was a lot of mergers and acquisitions that caused that. But that's 50% of their endpoints that they're not looking at that might not have antivirus on them or might not be under the right software. So there's a lot of different things inside there that we need to make sure we have that full visibility into our environment. So if you don't have that full visibility, if you just inherited something that you, like I did when I came in, if you inherited something and you're not sure what's going on, go take a look, go invest in a good discovery tool. Find out what you can about your environment. That way you can know what it is that you need to secure. And it's not just knowing that it's out there. It's great to say, oh, there's a box over here at 10.1.2.3. Right, but we want to know everything about that box too. So when you're doing that discovery, you want to know that, for example, in this slide, you see here, it's a Zscaler device. We want to know what it is. We want to know what it's connected to. We want to know, is it in compliance? When did it change? Who changed it? Does this need to be cleaned up? Does it have rules that are overly permissive? Does it have any failures for our compliance? Things like that. Does this device talk to people it shouldn't? What is it usually talking to? So we want to get that complete visibility into our devices and take a look, not just know that it's there, but know what it is, why it's there, who it's talking to. All right, so that's visibility. That's piece number one. Number two, once we know everything that we have, we want to start reducing that threat on those. So we can get a nice big inventory of everything that we have here in our environment. What we want to do is start like categorizing that. We want to start taking a look at what's our biggest threats in our environment, and we want to start hitting those. And when I was a Fireman user, Fireman has a nice little dashboard that shows if you integrate Fireman with a vulnerability scanning tool. There's a lot of really good ones out there. We use Rapid7 and Nessus, but if you integrate with Fireman with that, it'll tell you which rules are allowing vulnerabilities to become exploitable in your environment. So just because you have a vulnerability down here on your server farm, right, it might be blocked by a firewall rule, so it's not exploitable. But if we can integrate with your scanner, then all of a sudden we can tell you which rules are allowing those vulnerabilities to become exploitable in real life. And had a nice graph on there that told you, from the biggest vulnerabilities, like the root level vulnerabilities down to user. And that was a great way for me when I was a user of Fireman. To say, this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm making things better. This is how I'm making my network more secure every single day. So that threat reduction, we want to be able to take a look at what's out there. We want to see what our vulnerable devices are. We want to see what is vulnerable, what has holes, what it can pivot to. What do I need to do to fix that? We want to get that information not just from a reactive standpoint, but from a proactive standpoint too, to say, if I did this, if I made this change, if I allowed A to go to B, am I introducing any new vulnerabilities in my environment? Is anything going to become exploitable? If I allow A to go to B, is it going to break compliance? So there's a lot of different things that we want to look at from a threat level, but once we have that inventory, that's where we want to go. We want to start taking a look at the threats in our environment, scan somehow, like I said, lots of good tools out there to do this. But once we have that inventory, scan, take a look, see what's out there, start prioritizing it. The tool that you use will probably prioritize it for you. Start prioritizing and start knocking out those threats. All right, and then number three, let's get some automation. Let's get some automation going. So there's a couple reasons we want to do automation, right? You can see here, we can run what-if scenarios for new access. We can keep pace with the different changes that are going. One of the big ones for me was removing unneeded policies. We can reduce complexity, right? We can reduce complexity because, not just removing unneeded policies, but because now I don't have my firewall guy sitting there at 2 a.m. during my dark window on a Saturday trying to poke in 20 different entries with 500 IPs. I don't have to worry about that anymore. We're humans, we are going to mess up, but let's automate those things, those easy things, so we don't mess up. This slide, I only have about 5 minutes left, so I'm not going to go too deep into this slide. this slide shows a couple of different things you can automate. All right, we can automate things from your SOAR if you have one, or your ITSM, or from a lot of different places. Have a place to automate. And there's two different paths on this slide here. The bottom one is a normal, traditional change management process, right, where we go through different phases. And so we can even automate to, or you can automate, you want to automate to those different places, say during the design phase, that blue circle. During that design phase, I want to know, is this ACL change needed? Does it cause any new vulnerabilities into my environment? So you can get that just-in-time information from automation, or you can go to that top way and say, as long as this change that has come in doesn't break compliance, doesn't cause any new vulnerabilities, it just push it out. So you can automate all the way from total automation to just getting just-in-time information. But regardless, automating some of those easier events, some of those events that we do over and over and over, that will give our highly skilled people who are doing repetitive tasks time to do better and bigger things, always helps. So lots of benefits to automating, like to eliminate misconfigurations, optimize efficiency, reduce costs. We can have compliance by doing that. Lots of different benefits to that automating. So like I said from the very beginning, there's three big steps, and it's easy. It's nothing groundbreaking. It's basic, but it's basic for a reason. It's because it works. It's get that inventory, know what we have. Find yourself a good discovery tool. There's a ton of them out there. We have one, FireMon does, but find one, use one that you have. Figure out what you have. Then start prioritizing. Figure out where your vulnerabilities lay in your network. Prioritize those. Start attacking those one at a time. Assign a team to start going after those vulnerabilities, and you'll see that kind of threat level that you have going down every time. And then some of the easy things that you do, easy changes, start automating those and give your guys more time to actually start going back and look at those vulnerabilities and start making the place more and more secure. So real quick, I told you at the very beginning, I had a customer who said they put the node innovation, right? They slowed everything down. And a lot of places, a lot of the different approaches force you to slow down when you want to stay secure, right? You can see here at FireMon, bottom right-hand corner there, customers consistently report efficiency improvements as high as 90%. So all those different things I talked about today, the discovery, that threat mitigation, that automation, it's all available inside FireMon, all available inside one platform for you to use. I used it for years, and now I'm here. You can see we integrate across the ecosystem. In fact, I think we're missing a couple of newer ones on here, but there's very few things that we don't integrate with from a network standpoint. We're an agile network security policy platform. We work quickly. It's built on Elasticsearch. So it doesn't matter what you have. It doesn't matter what routers or switches or SASE or NSX or cloud or on-prem firewalls you have. We're going to give you one view for all that. Do you want to know where 10.1 at 2.3 is allowing or is allowed to the outside? We can search all of that via Elasticsearch in less than a second across every single technology that you have. So now when something happens, you have questions, you can do immediate triage. You can do that immediate what-if analysis. If somebody says, I need to go from A to B or B to C, you can put that in and do a what-if analysis inside FireMon and say, if I allow this to happen, what would happen? Am I going to break anything? Am I going to break my compliance? Am I going to allow any kind of new vulnerabilities into my environment? So there's a ton of different things that we can do from that. But like I said, there's lots of really good tools out there that do these things separately. FireMon does them all for you at once. But it's inventory. It's know what you have. It starts securing what you have, and then start automating what you have. And those are the big three. That if you follow those three, I promise you, like I said, if you follow those today, you're going to start having a better and safer tomorrow. So that's all I have for right now. I'll open it up for questions.
Great presentation. Really cool stuff that you guys are doing there at FireMon. We do have some questions for you. While we do that, Rob, we're just going to bring up this poll for everyone out there in the audience. Simple question: what additional information would you like about the FireMon solution? So I've been placing the questions as they come in here in the FireMon folder for you, Rob. I'm going to start with the first one on the list I see here, which is you mentioned scalability. How many connected devices should we expect this policy management solution to scale up to?
So that's a great question. It's a distributed solution, so we can have basically data collectors in different places. So there is no upper limit. We have people who use it for 4 or 5 devices. We have people who use it for tens of thousands of devices, and that's on-prem and in the cloud. So we haven't hit an upward limit yet, and I don't think we will.
Nice. That's good to hear. That almost infinite scalability is hard to find. Next question: how do you integrate with cloud technologies?
So right now we're integrating with AWS, we're integrating with Azure, and we're integrating with Google Cloud. So on the 3 of them, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit the same, but generally it's via the API. So we would get API access to those, or we'd get like a read account to those. And we would see everything that's out there. We would use that cloud native piece for kind of the discovery to see what's out there. We'd take that, concatenate it, bring it in with what we discovered inside, and give you one view of every single piece of that network at the same time.
Very nice. Very nice. Cloud visibility is seriously lacking. I know at a lot of companies. Next question: how do you measure risk across different systems?
So just like in the vulnerability, any vulnerability scanning tool that you have, you can assign risk. Like I said, I use Rapid7, I use Nessus. So you can say these systems are at 10, these systems are at 30. So what Firemon's going to do is we're going to take that information from that vulnerability scanning tool. And we're going to take that and we're going to bring it in and we're going to assign risk that way. So we're not going to assign the risk. We're going to let you assign the risk from the CVE, from whatever piece that you're using. That's how we're going to assign it. So we're going to use your categories, your risks to make sure you're getting the exact results that you want.
Got it. Okay. And does Firemon audit and do any sort of validation around network security policies? For example, like for compliance?
Yeah, absolutely. So compliance, there's one of the things that we say at Firemon that we do is 3 C's, right? It's change, cleanup, and compliance. So changes will help you see every change that happens. We'll report on it. We'll help you from a proactive standpoint, making sure every change is what you want. From a cleanup standpoint, we're going to help you get rid of unnecessary rules, overly permissive rules, rules that are redundant. And then from a compliance standpoint, which is what you asked about, we have probably about 15 different compliance standards built in, from PCI to HIPAA to NERC-CIP. And you can apply those to any firewall group of devices, cloud, SaaS, whatever you want. And you can also, that's 100% customizable. So you can take a framework, like say you want to be somewhat NIST compliant, but you don't really have to do NIST. So you could take that and you can modify it and say, okay, we don't really care about this piece, or we do care about this, and you can add it in. And then anytime any of your rules that break that, Firemon will let you know. And if you're going to put in a new rule and it's going to break that framework, Firemon will let you know. So yes, absolutely.
Very cool. Very cool. And then next question, they say, I saw a press release that you integrate with Zscaler. What does that look like?
So Zscaler, if any of you guys here use Zscaler, it's an awesome solution. I like it. I wish that when I was back in my user days, I wish that we had something there like Zscaler. I wish that something I used, I didn't. So what Zscaler looks like, the good thing about Firemon and the bad thing about Firemon is that we take everything and we normalize it. So it doesn't matter if you're looking at a Cisco switch or a Palo Alto firewall or NSX or AWS or Zscaler, we're going to make it look all the exact same. That way we can query that all the way across the board and give you one snapshot of how your entire environment looks. So if you've ever used Zscaler, you've ever looked at kind of the ACLs inside there, they're I love Zscaler, but the way that they present ACLs isn't very intuitive if you use other firewall type things. So we'll take that, we'll put it in a format that looks a lot better, a lot nicer, that's easier to read, easier to take a look at, easier to query, and we'll give that ability to you all the way across the board for what we're doing. And what we're looking at inside there is an advanced cloud firewall from that business edition or transformation edition of Zscaler.
Excellent. And here's a question from Chris. He's asking, what's the learning curve to get started with Firemon?
So that's a great question, Chris, wherever you are. That's a great question. So I didn't bring up the GUI on this. So the GUI is very, very consistent across the board. It's very quick. Like I said, it runs on Elasticsearch. It's very consistent across the board. So when you look at it, you're going to see the same things everywhere. And like I said, we're going to normalize everything. So if you want to look at your checkpoints, or if you want to look at your Azure environment, it's going to look the exact same to you. We're going to give you the information you need in a format that's very, very easy to read, very easy to look at, very easy to report on or set up alerts on. Before I came to Firemon, when I was a Firemon user, I used to tell people all the time, I told Firemon when I was interviewing, I said, I've been in sales for you for years, unofficially. And because, all of us talk, security guys, network guys, we all talk, we go to conferences, we know each other. And one of the things I'd always say about Firemon is that it's like having another person on my team that I don't have to write reviews for. It just worked. We would set up, we'd say, Firemon, if this happens, if something breaks compliance, email me. If there's a new vulnerability, text me. Every Monday, send me a report on how we're doing on X or Y. And it would just come, and it would come when it needed to. If it was an alert, it would come when whatever was triggered. So it's very, very easy to learn, very, very easy to use. When I do demos for Firemon, one of the first things I say is that when I was a Firemon user, I would come in and look at it for about 2 minutes a day. And that's it, because it just worked in the background, doing what it needed to do for me and letting me know things when I needed to know them. So very easy learning curve, very, very easy to use. Very low impact. It's not like a SIM where you need like 0.5 of a person to use it. Very easy. It's a great question.
Very nice. I think that's a great place to stop. Unfortunately, we're out of time in our live Q&A. I've placed some more technical questions there for you in the folder, the Firemon folder. If you have time to get back to those, I'm sure the audience would appreciate that. But excellent presentation. Thank you so much for being on the event today, Rob.
Thank you.
And for more information on Firemon, check out the handouts tab there. And there is a PDF you can download on maximizing public cloud security with Firemon. Of course, also visit firemon.com and try out the solution for yourself. Thank you to everyone who responded to the poll question on the screen. I'll just leave that up for a few more moments while I announce our next prize winners. We have an Amazon $500 gift card that's going to Matthew Almond from Texas. Congratulations to Matthew Almond from Texas. And our next grand prize, Microsoft Surface tablet, that's going to Juan Santizo from Washington. Congratulations, Juan Santizo from Washington. Still 2 more grand prizes and 2 more gift cards to give out on the event, so stay tuned. And with that, it's time to move on to our next presentation on today's Cloud MegaCast. I'm excited to introduce Mr. Bassam Khan, Vice President of Product and Technical Marketing Engineering at Gigamon. Bassam, take it away.
Thank you, David. Hi, hello, everybody. My name is Bassam, and I look after product marketing, technical marketing, and a couple of areas here at Gigamon. We have a very fast-paced and exciting topic for you today, talking about cloud journeys, specifically around compliance and what some of the implications are. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. There's 3 main things I want to talk about. The first section is about the 4 different cloud journeys. Why is this important? This is important because it allows us to be more successful, both from a cloud journey perspective, and if we are doing our workload migration, it also allows us to be more understanding what the compliance requirements might be across those. I wanted to mention that, also talk about the best principles and best practices in getting compliance, things to watch out for, limiting blast radius, things like that. And the last part of this, I'll talk a little bit about the Gigamon Visibility Fabric and how you can actually deliver on what I've talked about prior. All of this is based on a webinar that we did with a person named Rich Mogul, who is the CEO of Sclerosis, an amazing analyst in the cloud space. So if you see any content, if you want to dive deeper into the content, we welcome you to check out the webinar as well. It is hosted for replay on our website. Journey to cloud. Now, this is the most common topic, the most popular topic that I hear when I talk to our customers nowadays. We do a lot of executive briefing center calls. Unfortunately, they're not in person anymore. but every 100% of our customer base has some kind of a plan to move some of them, their workloads to the cloud. And every customer is unique. However, not every journey has to be unique. However, not every journey has to be unknown, in the sense that while workloads are being moved, there's lots of different moving parts. There's lots of different unique about each company. But there's certain patterns. And once we understand the patterns, we can kind of categorize that specific project into one of the 4 journeys, and then get some guidelines and best practices and so on. So first, let's look at the 4 different cloud journeys that we have defined. By the way, pay attention, because the next slide, I'm going to have a little quiz for you. So I'd like you to see which journey the next slide falls into. The first one is developer-led. Developer-led is the more planned type of journey where, it is one of the 4, where a developer team says, okay, we are going to build a cloud application because it's easy. We're going to build this thing in AWS or Azure because I'm learning how to come up to speed. I can get the application out very, very quickly. And then the rest of the team kind of follows along and says, we better go up there and help these guys secure and optimize and operationalize the application. The next one is a slower journey. It's a more methodical, planned out. I want to know all the different attributes of moving this specific workload from my data center into the public cloud or even a virtual private cloud. What do I need to do? The third one is snap migration. This is where enterprise has all of a sudden received a notification saying, hey, we're shutting down this data center, or this license issue is going on, whatever the reason might be. Let's move this workload into the cloud as soon as possible. This sounds very painful, and it is to an extent. I'll talk about how to minimize that pain, but this is something that we do hear a little too often, I must say. And the last one is building a brand new native application in the cloud. This is where it's the Zen moment. I get to build a brand new application in the cloud. I can leave a lot of the on-premises work back on premises. And this is sort of the clean greenfield kind of an opportunity. So these are the 4 different journeys. One of the customers that we have that we've talked about publicly is Zendesk. And most of you have heard of Zendesk. It's a very, very large services, SaaS application, a SaaS vendor. They have something like 150,000 customers. And they've moved all of their applications, their main application from on-premises to the cloud. They moved into AWS Cloud. One of the biggest concern there was, will I be able to maintain my SOC 2 compliance? And also, while I'm doing this, am I going to be killing my tools by sending too much cloud traffic now to the cloud versions of these tools? So they used Gigamon to go make that happen. This is about a year and a half ago. They successfully migrated, and now they've achieved the compliance. So here's the quiz part. Which of the 4 journeys do you think this falls into? Is it a snap migration? Is it data center migration? Is it a new build? Or is it I should probably just pull this up, or is it the native new build or the developer led? Just to get straight to the point, because we are actually going to be moving pretty fast today. The first 2 points here, the challenge gives away the answer. This is something where they're moving a data center from on-premises to the cloud. They want to maintain the compatibility. You also hear about cloud tools and security tools and so on. That tends to give away that this is a data center migration project that they went through. Here are the 4 journeys. This is an eye chart. You can ignore everything in the middle because I'll be covering that in the next slides. If you look at the leftmost column, how do you determine which journey this particular project is falling into? Important thing I forgot to mention is all of our customers, or most of our customers, have multiple projects that they're moving to the cloud. There's not one project, one workload. And sometimes you might get certain projects that fall into one bucket, certain projects that fall into other bucket. We have yet to see any project that fits into multiple of these buckets, meaning that they're pretty unique in which type of journey it is. So when I look at the left column, this describes, or these are different attributes per journey. So there's some that are kind of slower, some journeys that are slower, that's more planned out, that tends to be more like a data center transformation. Some that have moved too fast ahead. They've built the application and they're like, holy cow, we need to go secure this. whatever, we need to go make sure that the scalability is there from visibility perspective. That's when they bring in operations team. That's when they bring in the security team, and almost like an afterthought. So based on this matrix, you kind of know which journey this specific project that you have will fall into. By the way, you'll have access to the slides. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but feel free to come back and refer to the actual content itself. The developer-led journey is one of the first ones that's happened. This is when cloud started to take off a decade and a half ago or more. Developers see how easy it is to build a VM, run the application, build and run the application in the VM, all of a sudden scale it up to 10,000 users, up to 100,000, million users, and so on. However, that's when trouble starts to come in. I have to secure it. I have to go and bring in my operations team, my security team, and so on. So let's talk about some of the principles of this. When you get pulled into a discussion, into a situation where your developers have gone too far ahead and they say, help, they cry uncle, and you come in to kind of straighten out the matters here. The first thing, our recommendation is, Rich Mogul talks a lot about this, is, take a deep breath, don't be antagonistic. They know what they did wrong. They know they need help. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is, think about how to rethink your policies and your tooling and so on for the cloud environment. Don't just kind of bring the simple on-premises over from tools and policies and concepts over. Just kind of rethink whether it's an opportunity for you to reinvent and kind of take it one level higher. Understand the environment, everything about the environment. That's one of the things we find our customers don't often do, is to spend the time to understand what the infrastructure looks like, what additional scalability will there be, what kind of security components out there, what kind of compliance components are out there as well. And also, how does this interface interact with other applications? This is something that we hear all the time, that the developer has written something, it does a query back to an on-premises database. Well, guess what? There's a point there of concern, like how is it doing it? What privilege is that request coming in, and so on. So from a compliance perspective, the recommendations that we give to our customers is lock down those types of connections back on premises, just internet connections overall. If you look at a lot of the majority of the breaches that have happened in a public cloud environment, it's because of internet exposure, it's because of misconfiguration usually, changing default passwords and so on, where security is almost an afterthought. They think about it, I'll just set it up with the default configuration now, I'll go change it later. They forget to change it later. So it's kind of an access, this kind of an privilege management, and then configuration, super important, developer-led, for you to come in and make sure that it's up to par. Data center transformation. So that's where the planning happens first. So this is where we look at, this is where we get pulled in. We, as in the operations security team, get pulled in early to work with the team to migrate the work over. So it's where you work with the team and then you move this forward. And also the second bullet point here, we see this a lot as this one big account and big project and so on, where everybody smooshes all of the different components of that new workload running in the cloud into one single VM or one single environment and so on. So be careful of that as well. And this is where you have a lot of time to map out your applications, map out whom they're talking to. Gigamon can provide a lot of value in just finding out what the touch points are and such. Number two, build a scaffold. Don't just kind of go out there and building this entire infrastructure like a building. Build a scaffolding. Why? Because you're going to get additional projects in the future where you're going to have to do data center migration. So whatever you're doing, do it in a replicable way. Is that a right word? Replicable way that you can recreate and reproduce and redo for future workloads that start to move over. And some of the recommendations here, which I won't get into, you can come back in, things like building transit gateways, transit networks rather, building the infrastructure, and you're kind of templatizing everything that you're doing in order for the next workload to become easier to do. And then the third part of this is migration itself. Think about an iterative process. That's where the scaffolding comes in. Also, when you're doing this, think about how you would re-architect that specific application for the cloud next time. And guess the reason for doing that is not only for that application, but it helps your other applications be migrated a little bit easier. And then implement continuous assurance. So this is something that we're seeing all the time. That's very, very friendly for, or in line with cloud types of projects. Snap migration. This is the, oh crap. all of a sudden I need to move this over. I've got 18 months to do it, which is not a lot of time, 24 months, not a lot of time. I have to move this workload over. So the first objective here really is to minimize the risk. It's the blast radius. It's just like, what can I minimize? What kind of risks do I know of right now that I can minimize as I move this thing over to the cloud? So let's talk a little bit more specific around that. So first of all, building a scaffolding, as I talked about before. And guess what? This is another reason for having the scaffolding in the first place, because you will, or maybe you won't, but most of our customers do face some level of snap migration. And having that template in place on how they would typically do it helps a lot in this kind of snap migration. And this is kind of what I mean by the blast radius. So basically, build your new environment in a compartmentalized, segregated type of an environment. Don't just take your existing platform, which is the first tendency. That's the easiest way to take your on-premises workload, just moving it directly to the cloud with all of the, I hate to say this, baggage and everything else that you've built over the years for that application, and then just replicate that in the cloud. That's usually not the right approach, but sometimes you're forced to do that, parts of that. And so it's okay to have some parts of your application that's running in a larger VM than you typically want, and then you plan on refactoring later. But keeping in mind that, hey, I want to keep this compartmentalized helps a lot. The last point is very, very important. Again, this is where the risk comes in, this is where the compliance comes in, is being able to limit the internet access of the different components of your workload in the cloud. The second part to this, which I'll cover in the actual product discussion about 3 more slides down, is really being able to measure and monitor, rather, who's talking to whom. And that's super important for compliance reasons and just general risk reduction reasons, to know what those touch points are. Native new build. This is I'm in Zen mode kind of a build right now. So this is where you get to plan out your environment. This is typically, you get to work with the developers and kind of work hand in hand to make sure that the architecture is there. And the automation in mind, developers kind of have this known intuitively. Just make sure your tools are able to support that same level of automation. It's called infrastructure as software, infrastructure as code. And your job, you'll find the value that you'll be adding to the developers is knowing what the tools are, what the limitations are. So for example, Gigamon, we can completely scale out from visibility perspective. So if you're going from 1 VM to 50 VM, Gigamon's already considered as part of that. You can make API calls if you wanted to into our platform to expand the scaling and do functions like decryption, functions like deduplication, so on. And just make sure that you become experts in your tool's ability to keep up or at least conform to the scale out that your developers are looking for. The second point, super important here, as it was previously, just be careful of the exposure, the internet access points, and so on. And governance is a super important issue. This is what we're learning more and more through our customers, who are learning more and more about the importance of compliance, important governance off their cloud work infrastructure, which is not the top of mind, unfortunately, for the developer or even the DevOps teams. And transit gateways we talked about before. This should be part of your scaffolding. This should be part of your template. And also documenting what you're doing, because guess what? There'll be additional workloads that moves over, either as new builds or migrations, and that will need some level of templates as well. The last point is the please part. If you're in management role, please do give time to your team to come up to speed. Whether it's DevOps team, InfoSec team, NetOps team, that's quite often involved in these projects as well. Give them time to learn. Give them time to come up to speed and even make mistakes or learn along the way and change routes, because this is a new area for everybody, for all our customers moving workloads to the cloud. So a couple more slides on Gigamon. The first point here is shared responsibility. As you well know, cloud platform providers will ensure that the data is secure and access of the data is locked down, so nobody can physically walk into a public cloud data center and steal a hard drive and so on. They ensure that. However, and so they're responsible off the clouds, the physical security and such, but what they're not responsible for is what's running in the cloud. This is the whole shared responsibility part. And this is what we talk about. This is where the risk happens, is the limited visibility that you get from the way applications are running, the touch points, which applications communicating with what, which container is communicating to which container, and having access and visibility into the traffic is super important. And it's important for security. It's also important for performance. So one example that we give here, analogy, is that just as the service provider, the platform provider, is not responsible for the performance or the user experience of your application, it's a joint responsibility. They'll make sure servers are running fast. They won't make sure that your application is well written. Same thing here. They'll make sure that nobody breaks into the data center, into the cloud data center, but it's up to you jointly to make sure that the shared responsibility for security is there. The challenge that people face is inability to access the data. So it's getting access to the traffic that's going in. And every tool vendor that's dependent on network data, like the firewalls or WAFs or whatever else you might be using in the cloud, has some kind of an agent. But as soon as you start deploying 1, 2, 3, 5 agents for 5 different tools, the cost of 5, 6, 7% resource consumption per agent starts to add up pretty significantly. I can talk a lot more about this. If you're in the space, you'll know what the challenges are in spades, and it's difficult. That's where a solution like Gigamon comes in. What happens here is that we're collecting data one time, whether it's through our virtual taps or even native services like VPC mirroring, packet mirroring for AWS, packet mirroring for Google, and so on, where it's one-to-many. VPC mirroring has limitations, like you can have collect once. Only you have the ability to only send it to one destination, to one tool. But if you have 3, 4, 5 tools, you're going to deploy agents. With Gigamon, we collect the data from VPC mirroring one time. We can send it to any different tool that you want. And not only send the full data as a VPC mirroring would do, but it's also doing processing, deduplicating data, generating net flow out of the data. It's sampling if you choose to sample the data, and so on. So this makes your cost structure much, much more attractive. If there's data that you want to send to another cloud in a multi-cloud environment, you can limit the data. Say, I'm not going to send any data, but I suspect Bassam's traffic is looking strange, or this application's traffic is looking strange. You can filter that out and send only that data inter-region or inter-cloud if you wanted to, if you needed to. And the way we work is there's something called V-series, which is where the guts of our system is. That's where the logic, that's where the processing happens. We have the taps, the virtual taps that can be put anywhere. And then we have Fabric Manager, which is called GigaView FM. That's our orchestrator. That's our coordinator tool. All of this is scalable, scale-outable. So it's very, very cloud friendly. We have APIs. So if you have your existing orchestration automation tools, they can easily call into Gigamon, GigaView FM to start doing its things. Or you can embed us into your gold image so that VMs get increased. The tapping automatically is there. So it's super cloud friendly, super cloud scalable, scale-outable. And in a multi-tier hybrid environment, we provide the ability to send some of the data back to on-premises or send some of the on-premises data to the cloud for special tools needs and so on. Super flexibility, doesn't matter where the tool resides, doesn't matter where the data resides. It's one single interface to manage all of your data in motion. Hopefully that shed some light on compliance as it relates to the 4 different journeys. Hopefully the journeys and the steps and the tips and tricks in that was helpful to you. As a next step, we would highly encourage you to go to gigamon.com, top right of the screen. There's free trials, so you can just click on the trial. You can choose to drive it yourself, or you can contact us. We're more than happy to walk you through it. At that point, you'll see the power and of visibility in public cloud environments, especially when it relates to compliance. With that, I wanted to see if there are any questions, David.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great presentation, Bassam. This sounds like a really powerful solution that could help so many companies out there get that visibility they need. First question I wanted to ask you here that came in, it says, do native taps like VPC mirroring or Google's packet mirroring replace Gigamon?
Okay, good. Yeah, so I did touch on that. And if you wanted to, if you have one tool, yes, you can use those tools to send the data directly if you have one tool. Most of our customers have multiple tools that need network data. Some tools may need full packets. Some tools may need net flow packets, flow records. Some tools may need sample data because it needs to see everything. Some people might need packet slicing, so only the header information, not the payload information. That's the value of having a solution like Gigamon. We can use those tools for our ingestion and for ingress, and for egress, we can send the data to any tools. So so most of our customers have this kind of an availability to them of the VPC mirroring and Google packet mirroring. However, they still choose to use Gigamon for the processing, for the optimization of the data that they're sending around. Good question.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. Next question, why should we look at Gigamon versus tool vendor agents?
Okay. Yeah, I did touch on that. Sorry, I went over that kind of quickly. So tools vendors, such as a firewall, such as any type of a APM or even network monitoring tool in the cloud, provide a single way for it to get the data. And all of them have some sort of an agent. An agent is an application that you run inside each VM. Most of them cannot see container traffic, by the way. So that's where Gigamon's pretty unique in providing container visibility. But they have an agent that runs, and the agent sits there in your traffic plane. It looks at all the traffic coming in and just re-forwards the traffic out, just blankly. And there's no filtering and so on. So when you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 agents or more for each of the tools, you start to multiply your costs because each agent takes up 5, 6, 7% of resources off that VM itself. And when you have 3 tools times 5% is 15%, that cost starts to add up pretty quickly. So this is where, while there's tools options for agents options from tools vendors, is very important to streamline. That's what Gigamon provides.
Excellent. Yeah, that can really add up over time. Great point. Next question. You talked about some customers basically doing a lift and shift migrations. Isn't it better to rebuild new for the cloud? What's your take?
Great question. Yes, it is absolutely better to rebuild in the cloud. That is what we recommend to our customers from day one. However, if you look at any organization, particularly the largest organizations that we tend to deal with, the very large organizations that are using Gigamon extensively, there's many different workloads that they're trying to move to the cloud. There are some that are purely reinventable, refactorable in the cloud. However, most of their applications need some level of migration, even lift and shift. So today, about 20% of Gigamon's customers have purchased us and have used us for cloud migration. And I do a lot of EBC calls, as I mentioned, executive briefing centers, and 100% of our customers have some sort of a cloud plan. And that's where they're looking for guidance. And when you look deep down, double click all the way through, you're going to find that there's lots of projects that need to be lift and shift. I hate to say those words even, but that's just the reality for a lot of customers. So the thing that Gigamon provides is a single platform, no matter what your cloud choices are, whichever platform, VM, containers, Kubernetes, sidecar, whatever you're using, we support it. No matter what the journey is, Gigamon supports a single platform for all your visibility to make your cloud project successful.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have here in our Q&A session. But last question I usually ask is, how should people get started? I believe you already mentioned that on the previous slide.
I did. So we would love to hear from you. We'd love to help you understand our product better, whether talking to you directly or there's online cloud self-drive demos. You just click through. You'll get an automatic email with a login credential information. I believe the VM is up for at least an hour. So you can play with the product. We have guidelines. We have videos that walks you through. So try it yourself or let us walk you through. That would be a great next step for you guys.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your great presentation today, Bassam.
Thank you, David.
And thank you to Gigamon, of course, for supporting today's event. Visit gigamon.com for more information and try out the solution for yourself. All right. I've just brought up a poll question on the screen there that says, which of these cloud journeys best represents your cloud journey? So did you move to the cloud, or are you planning to move to the cloud due in part to your development team? Or maybe you had a data center migration? Was it a snap migration that just had to be done? Or did you have what some would consider a luxury of doing a native all-new cloud build? And this is a multi-select question, so you may have multiple cloud journeys or multiple cloud initiatives happening at your company. So I'll leave that up there for a moment, let everyone answer that, and then share the results. And while we do so, the folks from Gigamon are getting back to all these excellent questions that came in as quickly as possible. I want to remind everyone about our $50 per session best question prize that we're doing on this event. So make sure that, if you have a question in your mind, get it in, because there's pretty good odds when it comes to these best question drawings. We do appreciate all the excellent questions. All right, thank you everyone who responded to that poll question. Let me share the results of this one with you. And it looks like 49% said actually data center migration to the cloud. Very interesting to see that, followed by 28% had a native new cloud build, and 22% had a cloud initiative that was developer-led. Very cool to see. Thank you for answering that. And then last question before I announce our next set of prize winners, and then introduce you to our final presenter. So the question on the screen is, what additional information would you like about the Gigamon solution? And I'll leave that up while I announce our next prize winners. We have an Amazon $500 gift card going to Terry Lane from North Carolina. Congratulations, Terry Lane from North Carolina. And another Microsoft Surface grand prize is going to Jeremy Campbell from Missouri. Congratulations, Jeremy Campbell from Missouri. We've still got one more gift card and one more grand prize to give out today after our next presentation. And of course, don't forget about, like I said, the $50 per session best question prize for an Amazon $50 gift card. All right, excellent. Thank you everyone who responded to that poll question. And now it's time for our next presentation on today's Cloud MegaCast. I'm excited to introduce Richard Beckett, Senior Product Manager at Sophos. Richard, it's great to have you. Take it away.
Okay, hi everyone. Thanks very much for coming along. And today we're going to really walk you through the value that Sophos is going to bring when securing your cloud infrastructure against the latest generation of threats. Now, a lot of this is all about securing the life of cloud infrastructure. And when we talk about the life of your infrastructure, what I'm really meaning is from the build stage in your development cycle through to the ongoing security of live cloud services. So specifically today, what we'll address is security for Microsoft Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud Platform along the way. Okay. Now, we're focusing here today around the cloud because the cloud is really just changing the attack surface for organizations. Now, we recently conducted a global IT professional survey. And in that survey, this was around 3,500 IT professionals that we surveyed. And when we did that, we found that 71% of those organizations who were hosting data, they were hosting workloads in the cloud, had actually suffered a security incident in the last 12 months. So it's really this is the new, if you like, attack ground for cyber criminals today. And within that research, we even found that 59% of successful ransomware attacks, which we're very used to hearing about, they actually included data stored in the public cloud as well. But, why is it that attackers are so successful here in causing damage to organizations? After all, they're just looking for the same types of targets ultimately that you have in maybe private data centers or on premises. And you've been securing those for years now. Well, it's really because the cloud, your cloud network, your infrastructure, well, it is the same as on-prem, but it is different. There are some fundamentals there. And how you approach that difference is going to make a big change, or a big difference, if you like, to the protection that you end up with. So let's start with your on-premises or your private data center setups. I like to think of security here like this building, okay, where you've got all access is going in and out through one single point. It's the same for your network here, where all traffic goes in and out through one default, sort of well-defined ingress egress points. And that's all going to be protected by your firewall from threats. So it's nice and straightforward. Okay. Now, the cloud kind of blows that whole concept apart. In the cloud, you need to think of your network more like this building on the right here, where you have multiple windows, multiple openings. Okay, they all equal multiple potential access points for someone or something to get in and out. So all it's going to take is for someone to misconfigure a route table on your firewall, and your virtual machines that are running those private server workloads or perhaps hosting sensitive data, well, they're all suddenly accessible from the internet. Plus, you will likely introduce new cloud services from the cloud providers once you've migrated. And so you'll take advantage of things like shared storage, containers, database services, serverless functions. And those are all services that can't have an agent run on them. So like an agent, sort of like an anti-malware agent, for instance. So your surface area for attack becomes larger, becomes more dispersed, right? And these services can easily be misconfigured to allow public access from the internet, among other things. Now, the really worrisome sort of trend here is that the kill chain is nearly always the same, particularly around particularly around data loss, which is one of the top concerns for organizations as you move to the cloud. Now that attack chain tends to run like this. You know, an attacker will run an automated search, an automated scan against the public cloud provider's infrastructure. And there are tools that allow them to do that now. They will then find an unprotected resource. They'll connect to it, and they'll be able to sync that contents off to local storage where they can, sell that on, post it publicly, whatever they want to do. And that's kind of if you're lucky. As we mentioned at the outset, we've actually seen cases of ransomware being injected into these scenarios as well, just to really cause kind of maximum damage. It was a favorite tool in that cyber criminals arsenal on-prem, and they've carried that through to the cloud as well, unfortunately. So how do we suggest you begin with threat protection here? Well, in order to properly secure your cloud environment, you need a good design. You need clear use cases. Okay, and this is where the cloud provider's shared responsibility models will help you. This is Microsoft Azure's shared security model. AWS will have a very similar model that covers the same areas. All cloud providers will. This is just how they work. They will look after the physical infrastructure, the data center, hardware, the physical security into those premises, and you look after everything else. So what this model will do is really just lay down where you are responsible for security and where the cloud provider is responsible. Now, many organizations, as they move to the cloud, may believe that they can use just the native cloud provider tools, or perhaps they don't even need to worry about securing their data in the public cloud because they think it's safe enough, or they think the cloud provider is going to do it for them. Well, a quick internet search that you can do on your own is going to reveal, if you quickly search for public cloud security breaches, you're going to prove that viewpoint is just incorrect. So spend time to understand what you are responsible for here. And then how I like to use this model is take some time to run through those responsibilities on the left-hand side. To just use them to kind of identify your business or your technical pain points, or perhaps your priorities or your goals that you want to achieve through working to the cloud, through moving to the cloud. So within that, think about, what are your security gaps today or when you move to the cloud? What problems are you ultimately trying to achieve, and what do you need to prioritize in there? what does your estate look like today? How is it going to be managed? Who's going to manage that? And do you need a way to group multiple clouds or multiple products and services into one console to help them manage that whole estate? And think about what would happen if your data in the public cloud was compromised, right? Not just what would the IT team do, but how would it affect the whole organization, your reputation, for instance. Now, as I said in the intro, the cloud has some key differences, and that's really reflected in our approach here at Sophos to security in the cloud. Now, our approach is really to protect the life of cloud infrastructure, as I mentioned, all the way from the development cycle, from the point at which it's not even built and live, through to the ongoing security of those live cloud services in production environments. Now, Sophos have security and compliance checks that actually now span infrastructure templates, container images, all used to define and build new infrastructure in that development pipeline. Then we're going to go through to data protection. We can cover firewalling, protection of virtual machines running your server workloads, and even containers and serverless functions running applications. So together, this whole selection of services here is going to allow organizations to identify both the active threats that you may be more used to tackling, things like malware, fileless attacks, for instance, but also it's going to allow you to tackle those insecure configurations that can be exploited in a breach or cause a big compliance audit failure. So those kind of, if you like, potential threats within your organization that are lurking around that you may not be aware of. Now, to secure the life of infrastructure, you really need to be there at its conception, okay? But the security team isn't always there at that stage to witness the build of infrastructure. You know, development and operations teams are often going to lead here. They will automate the build of new infrastructure. They're going to define security configurations along the way. And those changes, you know, the sort of new infrastructure or changes to existing infrastructure and configurations, those changes can be done multiple times a day. So it can get quite risky. It can inject a lot of risk into the process. Now, in a world of on-prem centralized security, you will have pretty much complete control of configurations of your servers or your firewall. And you're going to have well-defined and managed access control policies. So it's all relatively straightforward there to ensure security procedures are followed. So it's not as big a challenge. However, you know, when moving to the cloud, and you're going to move from that centralized and controlled security model to a decentralized security model with DevOps in it, it is. Now, in that world of DevOps, you are allowing multiple people, even teams, to access cloud environments and add and configure their own resources. So it only takes one of those people, one of those teams to start to introduce a vulnerability, or maybe accidentally make a virtual machine or a database accessible from the internet. And attackers will be able to find that weak point in your environment. So our approach, as I say, is to protect the life of infrastructure from that development stage through to live. So the value of Sophos starts by making it easy for your security teams to discover all your cloud assets in use by the organization. And you're going to use that, do that using our Cloud Optics product. Now, if you wanted to do some background reading here, Cloud Optics is more of a newer area of security, and it's what's known as Cloud Security Posture Management. So if you wanted to do some searches on your own and do some background reading, that's the term that you want to be looking for. It's all about identifying assets, identifying misconfigurations, and hardening security posture. But ultimately here, because it's going to allow your security teams to discover all your assets in use. It means that even if security didn't create that asset, that resource in the first place, if that was done by another team, they can see it and they can review configurations, they can secure it, they can make sure it's properly managed going forward. And it does that with how it actually does that. It has read-only access into your cloud environments. So Cloud Optics creates, with that read-only access, it's pulling data from the cloud provider APIs ultimately and augmenting that with additional kind of artificial intelligence from our end and just our security expertise. So what it will do is pull that information in, and it's going to give you first, from a visibility point of view, it's going to give you a real-time snapshot of your inventory in the cloud. So it's going to cover things like your hosts, your Kubernetes nodes, containers, and network security groups, the native cloud provider firewalls, your virtual networks, your storage services you may be using, databases, even serverless functions. And it will do that across AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud Platform, as you can see there. But then what it will start to do is automatically create accurate network diagrams. So this is, a big compliance point in a lot of cases. A lot of compliance audits are going to ask for inventory details. They're going to ask for accurate network diagrams. And we talk to a lot of people who find this quite a challenge, first to just understand exactly what they have in the cloud and then turn that into an accurate network diagram that they're confident of. So this alone is going to save you a lot of time. But then what it'll do is start to analyze your native firewall security groups to show you how those resources are connected and how traffic is going to flow. And even more importantly, it'll be able to show you how traffic may flow. That's our red line in this picture. And so based on those security group settings, you can see, it's important, if you like, because you may not realize that access to or from the public internet is allowed to a key resource, like a database server. So you want to address that weakness in your infrastructure straight away. So it makes it very easy for you to find these weak points and fix them. So then we will extend detection and response. This is where Cloud Optics moves on. We'll extend detection and response in the public cloud by now continually monitoring that cloud infrastructure and those configurations to start detecting insecure deployments. And this is a big deal, right? As misconfigurations, when I say misconfigurations, we're talking about things like leaving ports open, leaving cloud storage in a public mode that can be found by an attacker, maybe not encrypting data, maybe creating overprivileged IAM roles that can then be exploited by an attacker. Now, these misconfigurations in that latest survey, our latest global survey, were found to be exploited in 66% of cloud security incidents. So it's a huge number, right? Attackers are actively searching for these weak points. And that ability to detect insecure configurations with optics is going to start from day one. Now, Cloud Optics is also going to act as the gatekeeper in that DevOps process. So when we talk about from day one, we're talking about how cloud infrastructure is built within your environment, and it will be built through a process like this used by DevOps, where they can start to automate the build of new infrastructure using infrastructure as code templates to define what that infrastructure, how it's configured, what it looks like. So Optics can sit within this process to build new infrastructure. And what it will do is ensure that only securely configured infrastructure that's going to meet your industry compliance standards is built, or security best practice standards is built in the first place. It is the kind of gatekeeper before any definitions of infrastructure reach the cloud provider for the build. And Cloud Optics will go on to provide continuous validation here of infrastructure through its life. So it's going to analyze hundreds of configurations. It's going to track inventory of assets, access roles. It'll now even be able to track cloud spend within your accounts as well to spot unusual sudden spikes in cloud spend, which can be a big telltale sign of cryptojacking, for instance. And it's all designed to harden your security posture. Then you've got results from those scans that are going to be fed into a range of off-the-shelf or customizable compliance policies and reports. So you can start to track your adherence to standards like SOC 2 or PCI, for instance. Now, the service also integrates with ticketing systems. It's going to integrate with Jira, it's going to integrate with ServiceNow. And what that's going to do is allow you to track security fixes through to completion. And you've then got Splunk and Slack channel integration as well to provide the right information, okay, to or alerts to the right teams. Okay, and those approaches are going to allow you to keep that decentralized, that agile security model that you need in the cloud, and if you need if you are running a DevOps team, by making it easy to automate security into sort of standard workflows. Now, your next area of focus should really be on secure access into cloud environments. Now, identity security really represents a huge challenge for organizations. And that same survey, 33% of organizations told us that stolen credentials were how the attacker got into the environment in the first place. And credentials can be stolen in a number of ways. It could be using maybe newer forms of newer methods that are pretty unique to the cloud, such as through a misconfigured WAF. And they'll use that misconfiguration to be able to obtain temporary credentials from metadata and use overprivileged access roles, so user roles with more permissions than they necessarily need that can go pretty much anywhere in the environment, and they'll use those roles to start to move around the environment. And we saw that in that large financial company's breach in 2019. That's exactly how that worked. So it's really just starting to show a growing trend of misconfigurations being exploited in that way. But let's not forget there are the same recognizable methods of obtaining credentials here, such as spyware on the endpoints used to access your cloud accounts, maybe phishing emails, maybe just a brute force attack using SSH. But, all these sort of the usual methods are still there, unfortunately. Now, depending on the permissions that that access grants, an attacker can search for, they can export data, they can access existing virtual machines. It can even provision new ones potentially as well, something we see a lot in cryptojacking attacks. So it's showing, attackers have many ways to hurt organizations besides malware, besides data breaches. And they also see value in everyone. You are all equal to these guys, unfortunately, where you may have particularly sensitive data. You may have some valuable assets within your environment. An attacker may just come after an organization because they are spending in the cloud. They have a cloud account and they can abuse that wallet, if you like, that is buying cloud infrastructure for things like cryptojacking. So there is value everywhere, unfortunately, here, and attackers know it. Now, overprivileged IAM roles and stolen credentials, they can all be avoided. Okay, so Cloud Optics AI actually connects disparate actions around your cloud environment to start to identify unusual cloud access patterns and login locations in near real time. Identifying this user normally logs in London, now they're logging in Sydney. at the same time, that is very unusual and we should investigate that. That looks like either misuse or theft of credentials. So we can identify those anomalies in near real time to identify those signs of credential theft. That's the first kind of area that we cover here. Where it gets really quite interesting and exciting for you is that we can also start to visualize those I am relationships. And this is particularly helpful for organizations because we're here able to analyze the complex and quite interwoven I am user roles, permissions, role-based access to make it clear for you to see where to make I am policy changes. And it's important because if you have overprivileged users here, say I have a user who has access to 200 of my cloud services, but rarely uses more than 10. Well, if an attacker gets hold of those credentials, they can go to all those 200 services. And if that user is part of a group and that group is then associated to other services and has other privileges, they can stepstone through your environment to go wherever they want. So it's important that we regularly monitor this your IAM policies and make sure you're following the standards of least privilege ultimately. So you're locking that down as much as possible while still enabling teams to do their job and get what they need to get done. Now, as we wrap up, whether you've used the public cloud for some time, or maybe you've recently increased usage with the whole global situation and the need for more remote working, or maybe you've found that you are now suddenly in a position where you've had to accelerate migration plans to get additional capacity, for instance. Start with the assumption that attackers will find your cloud assets. I think that's the most important thing. Get an accurate picture of what you are running and what your security posture looks like. So to help with that, the team at Sophos is offering this new free cloud security assessment service. Now, ultimately, what you'll get with that is guided setup, first off, of the Cloud Optics product. This is a read-only, agentless SaaS service, so it's very low impact on the organization. Doesn't have any sort of any default write permissions within your environment, so very safe from that point of view. You will then, for 30 days, the team will work with you to complete a security and compliance review of your environment. And then at the end of that, they'll present back a summary of those assessment findings and identify any follow-up actions to start to harden your security posture. So if you're interested in that, I'm sure the team will be in touch with you to tell you more about that after the session today. But for now, I really hope you've enjoyed the session. I've loved taking you through the latest and greatest of what we're doing in cloud security. So thank you.
All right, great presentation from Richard there at Sophos. Thank you so much. We got a ton of great questions coming in. I've just brought up the poll question that says, what additional information would you like about the Sophos solution? And I'll leave that up here for a few moments to allow everyone to respond to that question. And while I do that, we're going to bring up the prize machine here and see what our final grand prize and final Amazon gift card winners look like. All right, I'm sorting all these questions into the folder for Richard at Sophos. Appreciate all the great feedback about how you enjoyed the presentation. Great presentation. Thank you. Very interesting. Lots of great feedback. So thank you for that. We do appreciate it. Jerry said drum roll. Let's bring up the drum roll, please. And final winners for today, an Amazon $500 gift card. That's going to Joseph Ward from Pennsylvania. Congratulations. And our final grand prize, that's going to Schuler Thorne from Colorado. I'll post all the prize winners there in the questions box in case you missed any of them. If you did not win on today's event. Of course, best of luck to everyone on future events. We've got a lot more events coming up. You'll be automatically redirected to our events landing page after today's presentation. But before you go, don't forget to respond to that poll question on the screen. And of course, check out the Sophos handout. It's there in your audience console. That is the 2020 State of Cloud Security Report. It's got a lot of really good data in there, very well designed report, so make sure that you check that out and download it before you go. Also, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the 10 on Tech podcast. It's over in the iTunes store. If you are a potential sponsor of an upcoming EcoCast or MegaCast, reach out to us at connect@actualtechmedia.com, and we would love to chat about having you on the show. And finally, don't forget to join us on our next event, which is actually happening tomorrow, covering technologies that support and enable a remote workforce. You'll hear from NetApp, Duo, ActiveTrack, and Rapid7 on tomorrow's EcoCast. Hope to see you there. As soon as this event concludes, you'll be, again, redirected to our events landing page, and we hope to see you on upcoming events. All right, I hope that everyone learned a lot on today's MegaCast on ensuring trust and security in enterprise IT and the cloud. I had a great time. I hope that you did too. I hope everyone will stay safe, take care, and have a great day. Bye-bye.